Hello friends. Welcome to the DXD Tales. How are you all? So we are back with an interesting movie on what if Issei was the son of Ophis and Tiamat, the twin dragon goddesses. Also be sure to subscribe and like this video. Now let's begin. Chapter 1. Child of Infinity and Chaos. The void between dimensions rippled with disturbance, a phenomenon that had never occurred in all the eons of existence. Here, at the boundary of reality itself, two entities that should never have met face to face circled each other with ancient, calculating eyes. Ophis, the Ouroboros dragon, embodiment of infinity and nothingness, regarded her counterpart with unblinking obsidian eyes. Her form shifted between that of a young girl with midnight hair and the endless serpent that devoured its own tail. Chaos Karma, she spoke, her voice simultaneously a child's whisper and the echo of eternity. You have crossed boundaries few dare to approach. Across from her, scales of sapphire and turquoise catching non-existent light, Tiamat's massive draconic form coiled through the nothingness. The Chaos Karma dragon, strongest of the 5 dragon kings, broken countless seals to reach this place beyond places. The boundaries grow thin, infinite one, Tiamat responded, her voice like thunder rolling across desert plains. The factions war, the gods scheme, and the balance tilts. You feel it as I do. Ophis made no movement that could be interpreted as agreement, yet the void around them pulsed once. I seek silence. The Red One has invaded my home dimension. Tiamat's massive head inclined slightly. And I seek something beyond endless territorial disputes with lesser beings who forget their place. Her azure eyes narrowed. The ancient prophecies speak of convergence. Of infinity meeting chaos to forge something unprecedented. Prophecies are mortal constructs, Ophis replied, though curiosity tinged her normally expressionless features. Yet equilibrium has been disturbed. The dimensional fabric weakens. The two primordial dragons continued their conversation in languages beyond human comprehension, in concepts rather than words. What passed between them would later be debated by scholars of every supernatural faction, but none would ever truly understand the decision made in that moment of cosmic significance. Infinity and chaos, forces diametrically opposed yet fundamentally connected, reached a conclusion that would alter the fabric of existence. It shall be done, Ophis finally stated, her form solidifying into that of the young girl. A convergence, a child of our essences. Neither wholly chaos nor entirely infinite. Tiamat's massive form began to glow with blue-green energy. The first true dragon born in millennia. A bridge between opposing forces. A necessity, Ophis corrected, for the coming imbalance. What followed defied the natural laws of creation. Dragon magic, ancient beyond measure, swirled between them. Ophis's dark energy of infinity intertwined with Tiamat's chaotic blue flame. The void itself seemed to hold its breath as something impossible began to form, a perfect sphere containing dual energies that should have annihilated each other but instead achieved precarious harmony. 9 months in human time passed as the essence gestated within the dimensional void, careful. Why tended by both dragon goddesses in their own manner. Ophis with distant patience, Tiamat with fierce protection. When the sphere finally cracked, revealing a human-looking infant with remarkable eyes, one obsidian black, one sapphire blue, both creators knew their experiment had succeeded beyond expectation. Issei, Tiamat named him, in the ancient dragon tongue where the word carried meanings boundary crosser, and harmony in opposition. Ophis simply nodded, one slender finger touching the infant's forehead. He will know both worlds. All worlds. And thus began the unprecedented existence of Issei. Child of infinity and chaos, bearer of powers no single being had ever contained. Raising a dragon deity hybrid presented challenges that even the most powerful supernatural entities found daunting. The infant Issei's crying could crack dimensional barriers, his laughter caused temporal fluctuations. His very existence was an anomaly that drew attention from every corner of the supernatural world. Tiamat established his primary dwelling in a pocket dimension adjacent to the human world, a space where Dragonkind had once ruled before retreating from mortal civilization. Here, crystal spires rose from floating islands that drifted through perpetual twilight, and the boundaries between elements blurred in cascading waterfalls of liquid fire and solidified air. Again, Tiamat instructed, her human form, a regal woman with azure hair and gold-flecked eyes, pacing around 5-year-old Issei. The boy, small but perfectly proportioned, wore a concentrated frown as he held his hands before him. Between his palms, blue-black energy sputtered and sparked. "I'm trying," he said, frustration evident. "The chaos part keeps fighting the infinity part." Tiamat's lips twitched with something resembling pride. "Of course they fight. They are opposing forces. Your achievement is not in making them agree, but in preventing mutual destruction." From her perch atop a crystal formation, Ophis observed silently. Though she rarely participated directly in training sessions, her presence was constant, a shadow that never left Issei's side. While Tiamat taught through instruction and demonstration, Ophis taught through proximity and occasional cryptic statements that only made sense years later. The young boy took a deep breath, closed his mismatched eyes, and tried again. This time, the energy between his palms stabilized, forming a perfect sphere that contained swirling patterns of midnight and azure. "Good," Tiamat nodded. "Now release it at the target." 50 yards away, a boulder floated in midair. Issei extended his arms and released the energy sphere. It shot forward with precision but, upon impact, did something unexpected. Instead of destroying the boulder, the sphere enveloped it completely. For a moment, the rock existed in perfect suspension, then slowly collapsed inward until nothing remained but a pinpoint of light that winked out of existence. Silence fell across the training ground. "That was," Tiamat began. "Interesting," Ophis finished, appearing suddenly beside Issei. She placed a hand on his shoulder. "You did not destroy. You collapsed space around the object and sent it elsewhere." Issei looked between his two mothers with wide eyes. "Is that wrong?" "No," Tiamat said thoughtfully. "It's unprecedented. Your power docen. Chi manifest as mine or Ophis's would independently. You're creating something new." Later that night, as Issei slept in his chamber where constellations moved across the ceiling in patterns matching his dreams, his mothers convened in the central hall of their crystalline fortress. "His development exceeds predictions," Tiamat stated, pacing the perimeter of the vast circular room where maps of multiple dimensions floated as luminous projections. "The synergy between chaos and infinity creates possibilities I hadn't considered." Ophis remained motionless at the center of the chamber. "The factions have noticed. The devils sent observers to the boundary today. Angels have been patrolling the outer reaches." Tiamat's eyes narrowed, vertical pupils contracting to thin slits. "Let them observe. None would dare challenge us directly." "Not us," Ophis agreed. "But they will want influence over him. The child represents potential alliances too valuable to ignore." "He's just a boy," Tiamat growled, a hint of protective maternal instinct coloring her normally strategic thinking. "He is more," Ophis corrected. "Already, his existence affects dimensional stability. The barriers strengthen where he spends time. The chaos that would normally result from infinity's presence subsides. He brings balance." Both dragon goddesses contemplated this concept, so foreign to their natural states. Balance was the domain of lesser beings, gods and factions who maintained artificial constructs of order. Dragons, especially those of their caliber, existed beyond such concerns. Yet their chill, inherently created equilibrium just by existing. "He will need to understand all the worlds eventually," Tiamat finally said. "Not just our realm and passing glimpses of others." Ophis inclined her head slightly. "The human world would provide valuable experience. Their brief lives teach perspective that immortals often lack, and make him a target for every faction seeking advantage," Tiamat countered. "Yes," Ophis agreed simply. "That too will be educational." By his 10th birthday, Issei had developed remarkable control over his dual heritage. His training now extended beyond He pocket dimension into brief expeditions to various realms, the underworld where devil society thrived, the higher planes where angels and fallen maintained uneasy coexistence, the yokai territories scattered throughout the human world. These journeys were always carefully controlled, with either Tiamat or Ophis maintaining a watchful presence, though rarely revealing themselves to the inhabitants of these realms. To most supernatural beings, the sudden appearance of either dragon deity would cause panic or unwanted diplomatic incidents. It was during one such expedition to the human world that Issei first encountered genuine danger beyond training scenarios. Tokyo's Asakusa district hummed with activity as tourists and locals alike visited the famous Sensoji temple. Among them walked a black-haired boy with unusual eyes. observing human customs with fascination. Ophis had taken the form of a small black snake wrapped around his wrist like a bracelet, while Tiamat monitored from the dimensional boundary. They pray for such small things, Issei observed quietly, watching visitors toss coins, clap hands, and bow before the shrine. Good test scores, business success, health for relatives. The snake around his wrist tightened slightly. Brevity makes desires more focused, Ophis responded telepathically. Issei nodded thoughtfully, continuing through the temple grounds. He had nearly reached the main hall when his instincts flared. The air pressure changed subtly, and the hairs on his arms stood up. Sacred gear user, Ophis communicated. Multiple. Observing you. Issei didn't alter his pace or expression, having been taught the value of perceived ignorance. Hostile, he asked mentally. Uncertain. Independent or faction-aligned. Their auras are masked. Continuing his tour of the temple grounds, Issei catalogued escape routes and potential battlegrounds that would minimize human casualties if conflict erupted. 10 years of tactical training under Tiamat had instilled automatic strategic assessment. He had just reached the temple gardens when a young man in clerical attire approached, smiling pleasantly. Quite impressive architecture, isn't it? The stranger said in flawless Japanese, though his features suggested European heritage. Beautiful, Issei agreed politely. The incense smells different from the dragon temples. It was a calculated revelation, enough to confirm the stranger's suspicions while asserting Issei's awareness of being monitored. The young man's smile remained fixed, but his posture subtly shifted. Dragon temples, how fascinating. I didn't realize they maintained places of worship in this realm. His left hand tensed slightly, a movement most would miss. They don't, anymore, Issei replied casually. Most were destroyed during the Great War when dragons refused to align with any faction. Around his wrist, Ophis remained perfectly still, though Issei could sense her gathering power as a precaution. You say, am quite knowledgeable for someone so young, the cleric observed. My name is Marcus. I represent certain interests that maintain balance between supernatural entities. Balance is important, Issei agreed, meeting the man's gaze directly. My mothers certainly think so. At the plural, mothers, Marcus's expression flickered with genuine surprise. Behind him, almost imperceptible movements revealed 3 more individuals taking positions around the garden, a woman pretending to photograph the cherry trees, an elderly man feeding pigeons, and a teenager texting on a bench. Perhaps we could speak somewhere more private, Marcus suggested, his tone still pleasant but with an underlying edge of command. Issei smiled. I don't think that's necessary. Your companions have already established a barrier that humans can't perceive. He glanced around at the nearly frozen tourists and locals, now moving at a fraction of normal speed as the boundary between reality and a pocket dimension solidified. Marcus's facade of friendliness vanished. What exactly are you? Our instruments detected unprecedented energy fluctuations. Dragon energy, but different. I'm just a visitor, Issei replied calmly. Learning about human customs. The woman with the camera approached, her device now transformed into an ornate silver crossbow. He's not just dragon, she reported to Marcus. There's something else, something I've never sensed before. The air around them grew heavy as the 4 strangers closed their formation. Sacred gear users, Issei realized, likely working for one of the Hirsch factions that hunted supernatural beings classified as threats. We'll need you to come with us for assessment, Marcus stated firmly. Cooperate, and no harm will come to you. Issei sighed. I'm afraid my sightseeing isn't finished. Perhaps another time. The snake around his wrist uncoiled slightly, its obsidian eyes fixing on Marcus. The cleric took an involuntary step backward, prima instinct recognizing danger before his conscious mind processed it. That's, he began, face draining of color. Before he could finish, reality itself seemed to bend around Issei. The pocket dimension they'd created warped, its boundaries folding inward as space collapsed around the young dragon hybrid. Ophis's power of infinity compressed the dimensional barrier while Issei channeled Tiamat's chaos energy to destabilize its structure. The 4 sacred gear users found themselves suddenly back in normal Tokyo, surrounded by unaware tourists, with no trace of the black-haired boy or his serpentine companion. Miles away, in a quiet forest clearing outside the city, Issei materialized with Ophis still wrapped around his wrist. That was close, he exhaled, heartbeat finally slowing. Ophis unwound from his arm, transforming back into her preferred form of a young girl. You revealed too much, she stated without inflection. I know, Issei admitted. But I wanted to see how they would react to partial information. A swirling portal of blue-green energy opened beside them, and Tiamat emerged in her human form, eyes blazing with barely contained anger. Exorcists, she snarled. Church faction black operatives. They've been monitoring dimensional fluctuations. Her gaze softened slightly when it fell on Issei. Are you unharmed? He nodded. They weren't expecting what they found. I don't think they know about me specifically, just detected unusual energy. Tiamat exchanged a glance with Ophis. This confirms our concerns. The factions grow more proactive in their surveillance. Your existence won't remain secret much longer. Perhaps it's time, Ophis suggested, her quiet voice carrying significant weight. For the next phase, Issei looked between his mothers, sensing a predetermined plan unfolding. What next phase? Tiamat sighed, placing a hand on his shoulder. You're old enough now to begin understanding your purpose. The balance between supernatural factions deteriorates. Ancient enemies stir beyond the dimensional barriers. Your existence, the convergence of our powers, was necessary preparation. Preparation for what? Issei asked, a knot forming in his stomach. For what comes next, Ophis stated simply. The Great Red moves more frequently between dimensions. The biblical god's absence creates power vacuums. Devils and fallen angels encroach on territories once neutral. And I'm supposed to fix all that. Disbelief colored Issei's voice. Tiamat smiled, an expression rarely seen on her severe features. No, you're supposed to observe it and help establish what comes after. But first, you must understand all players in this game. It's time you lived among them without our constant presence. The implications hit Issei with full force. You're sending me away. We're giving you independence, Tiamat corrected. While maintaining distance to protect you from those who would target you specifically for your connection to us. Ophis nodded once. Kuo Town, Japan, a convergence point of supernatural factions. Devils control territory there, but other powers maintain observation. You will attend their academy and learn through immersion. Alone? Issei asked, hating how young his voice suddenly sounded. Never alone, Tiamat assured him, her eyes flashing with fierce protection. But visibly unconnected to us. You'll have resources, knowledge, and emergency protocols. But to truly understand the world you'll help reshape, you must experience it as yourself, not as our extension. When? Issei managed, mind already racing with implications. Tomorrow, Ophis stated. Arrangements are complete. 5 years passed in Kuo Town with remarkable speed. For Issei, accustomed to the nearly timeless existence in his mother's realm. The rapid pace of human life required significant adjustment. Days became structured around school bells rather than training sessions. Conversations revolved around and topics instead of dimensional theory and dragon history. He had adapted well, establishing a carefully crafted persona as a quiet, academically gifted transfer student. Not popular enough to draw excessive attention. Not reclusive enough to generate suspicion. Perfectly, deliberately average in social standing while maintaining top academic performance. His apartment, a spacious penthouse off Issei Alley owned by a multinational corporation that served as one of Tiamat's many human world fronts, offered private space to maintain essential training regimens. Each night, he spent hours meditating, channeling the dual energies that composed his core, keeping their opposing natures in precarious balance. Communication with his mothers remained minimal by design. Ophis occasionally appeared without warning, materializing in his living room to deliver cryptic updates before vanishing again. Tiamat maintained more structured contact through secured channels, a specialized communication mirror that operated across dimensional boundaries. In the human world, Issei learned patience of a different sort than Ophis had taught. The patience to sit through tedious lectures, to engage in small talk with classmates who couldn't possibly comprehend his true nature, to pretend interest in normal teenage concerns. Yet he also discovered unexpected pleasures. Human food, with its infinite variety and creativity. Music, from classical to contemporary. Literature that captured the brief, brilliant intensity of mortal existence. And friendship, limited by necessity, but genuine within those limitations. By his third year at Kuo Academy, Issei had established himself as something of an enigma. Respected by teachers, regarded with curious interest by classmates, but known truly by none. Exactly as planned, until the day everything changed. The transition of Kuo Academy from all girls to co-ed had occurred shortly before Issei's arrival, a fact he later discovered was no coincidence. The school's true ownership, the Grimoire and Citri Devil clans, had orchestrated the change to better monitor supernatural activity in the region. What better cover than a prestigious academy filled with hormonal teenagers, where unusual events could be dismissed as youthful exuberance? Issei had sensed the devil presence immediately upon enrollment but maintained his cover perfectly. He knew they would eventually notice him. Impossible to completely mask the aura of a dragon hybrid indefinitely, but he could control how much they perceived. On a bright spring day during his third year, that carefully maintained facade finally cracked. The kendo club practice had just ended when Issei cut across the courtyard toward the library. His routine rarely varied: classes, library research, quiet dinner alone, training, sleep. Repetition provided security and minimized risk of exposure. Hyodo-kun. The feminine voice caused him to pause, turning to find a crimson-haired figure approaching with graceful confidence. Rias Grimoire, third-year student and school idol. Also, as Issei well knew, heir to the Grimoire clan and sister to one of the current Satans ruling the underworld. Grimoire-senpai, he acknowledged with a polite bow, mentally reinforcing his aura suppressors. How may I help you? Rias smiled, the expression not quite reaching her turquoise eyes. I've noticed you spend considerable time in the library. Are you researching something specific? A casual question with deliberate undertones. Issei maintained his pleasant expression while calculating response options. Historical mythology, mainly. A personal interest. How fascinating, she replied, falling into step beside him as he resumed walking. Any particular mythological system? I find comparative study most interesting, he answered truthfully. The common threads between seemingly unrelated cultures. Rias nodded thoughtfully. Like dragons appearing in virtually every mythological tradition worldwide. The direct approach, then. Issei allowed himself a small smile. Dragons, great floods, divine children born of unusual circumstances. Human imagination follows similar patterns across cultures. They reached the library entrance, where Rias paused, blocking his path with subtle determination. Human imagination, she repeated. An interesting choice of words. Issei met her gaze directly, allowing the slightest flicker of his true nature to surface in his mismatched eyes. Just an observation, senpai. Something changed in Rias's demeanor, a sharpening of focus, a minute tensing of posture. Power recognized power, predator acknowledged predator. The Occult Research Club meets in the old school building after classes, she said, voice lowered despite the empty courtyard. As president, I'd like to personally invite you to attend. Today, perhaps. The invitation represented exactly the kind of factional contact Issei had been positioned to establish. The moment his mothers had prepared him for over 15 years. I'd be honored, he replied with perfect composure, despite the momentous shift this represented. Though I should warn you, I may know more about occult matters than your average student. Rias's smile turned genuine, a flash of excitement breaking through her diplomatic veneer. Oh, I'm counting on it, Hyodo-kun. The old school building exuded an atmosphere of dignified decay. Gothic architecture stood in stark contrast to the modern main campus, its weathered stone facade covered with creeping ivy. Windows of stained glass filtered the afternoon sunlight into patterns of colored light across worn wooden floors. As Issei followed Rias through echoing hallways, he catalogued defensive positions and exit routes out of ingrained habit. His senses, partially unleashed now that pretense was becoming unnecessary, detected multiple supernatural presences ahead. Devils, primarily, but with variations that suggested unique abilities. Here we are, Rias announced, pausing before an ornate wooden door bearing the Occult Research Club emblem. My headquarters, so to speak. She opened the door without waiting for response, revealing a spacious room that resembled a Victorian parlor more than a school club room. Antique furniture, velvet draperies, occult symbols tastefully incorporated into the decor. Subtle magic hummed within the walls, privacy wards, detection barriers, and protection spells woven into the very structure. 4 individuals occupied the space, each pretending casual disinterest while radiating acute awareness of the newcomer. "Everyone," Rias announced, "this is Issei Hyodo, our potential new member." A petite white-haired girl sat in the corner, a half-eaten parfait before her. Her expressionless face betrayed nothing. But Issei immediately identified her yokai energy signature, Nekomata, possibly Nekosho based on the distinctive spiritual pattern. Beside a tea cart stood a young woman with long black hair tied in a ponytail, whose serene smile didn't match her wary eyes. Her energy signature registered as distinctly human, yet with unusual modifications suggesting artificially implanted sacred gear. Near the window, a handsome blonde boy looked up from a book with a friendly smile that almost concealed his assessment of Issei's threat level. His aura radiated holy sword affinity, extremely unusual for a devil. Finally, beside an ornate chess set, stood a young woman with glasses and short black hair who made no attempt to disguise her analytical observation. Her magical signature IED her as the queen in Rias's peerage, the strongest piece in the devil's collection. "Welcome," the bespectacled woman said formally. "I'm Akano Himahima, vice president." "Kiba Yudo," the blonde introduced himself with a princely bow. "Kaneko," the white-haired girl stated flatly, returning to her dessert. "And I'm Asia Argento," the ponytailed girl added with genuine warmth. "It's nice to meet you, Hyodo-san." Issei bowed respectfully to each. "Thank you for having me. Please call me Issei." Rias gestured toward an empty chair opposite her own across a coffee table. "Please, sit. Would you like tea?" As Akano prepared the service, Rias studied Issei with undisguised interest. "I should be direct," she said once he was seated. "This isn't actually about recruiting you for club activities." "I assumed as much," Issei replied calmly. "Given that this room contains 2 high-class devils, a reincarnated human, a holy sword wielder who's somehow also a devil, and a Nekomata." Silence fell across the room. Kaneko's parfait spoon clattered against her dish. Kiba's friendly expression hardened to wariness. Asia's eyes widened in surprise. Only Rias and Akano maintained composure, exchanging a significant glance. "Impressive," Rias finally said. "Though incomplete, Akano is half-fallen angel. Kaneko is specifically Nekosho. And you left yourself out of the inventory entirely." Issei accepted the teacup Akano offered with a polite nod. "An oversight. To complete the list. And 1 dragon hybrid attempting to maintain a low profile." "Dragon hybrid," Akano repeated, taking her position behind Rias's chair. "That explains the unusual energy signature we detected. Though not its specific nature, which remains puzzling." Rias leaned forward, elbows on knees, chin resting on interlaced fingers. 3 weeks ago, our boundary monitors registered a power spike unlike anything we've encountered. Dragon adjacent but fundamentally different. We traced it to Kuo Academy, specifically. To you during what appeared to be a minor altercation with a falling tree branch in the courtyard. Issei winced internally at the memory. A sudden storm had sent a massive branch crashing toward a group of first-year students. Instinct had overridden caution, and he'd momentarily tapped his true power to divert the branch's trajectory without apparent intervention. The branch changed direction mid-fall, Kiba commented, defying both gravity and momentum. "I appreciate discretion," Issei acknowledged. "The alternative would have caused injuries." "Your compassion is commendable," Rias agreed. "But it's your nature that interests me more directly. Dragon hybrids are exceptionally rare, usually offspring of a dragon and another species. Yet your energy signature doesn't match known hybridization patterns." Here was the crux. How much to reveal, how soon? Issei sipped his tea, buying seconds to decide. "My heritage is complicated," he finally said, deliberate understatement coloring his tone. "And potentially problematic if widely known." Rias's eyes gleamed with intellectual curiosity. "This is devil territory, protected by both Grimoire and Citri families. Whatever secrets you harbor would remain secure within these walls." "Bold promise," Issei replied with a slight smile. "Especially when you haven't yet assessed whether my presence represents threat or opportunity." "Are you a threat?" Kaneko asked bluntly, speaking for the first time since her introduction. Issei considered the question seriously. Not to Kuo or its inhabitants. My presence here is purely educational. Educational? Akino inquired, arching one elegant eyebrow. I've spent years learning abstract theory about supernatural factions, politics, and interactions, Issei explained, offering a partial truth. My guardians felt practical experience would complete my understanding. Guardians, Rias repeated thoughtfully. Interesting term for parents. Issei maintained neutral expression despite her probing. Family structures among dragons differ from human or devil norms. Asia, who had remained silent during the exchange, suddenly spoke. You seem lonely, she observed with surprising insight. Living here by yourself, pretending to be something you're not. Her simple statement, delivered without agenda, momentarily disrupted Issei's carefully maintained composure. In all his years of training for faction interactions, preparing for interrogations and political maneuvering, no one had prepared him for genuine empathy. He began, then paused, recalibrating. Isolation has been necessary for security reasons. Rias studied this reaction with keen interest before making a decisive gesture. Perhaps we can offer an alternative. The Chi Research Club provides cover for supernatural beings to interact normally within Kuo. Real friendship, not just strategic alliances. In exchange for what? Issei asked directly. Initially, information sharing. You clearly possess knowledge about the supernatural world. We maintain peaceful relations between factions in this territory. And long term, Rias smiled. That depends on what we learn about each other, doesn't it? I won't insult you by offering peerage membership without knowing your capabilities or interests. Nor would I expect you to commit to anything without proper consideration. It was a diplomatically perfect opening, non-committal yet offering genuine possibility. Exactly what Issei had been positioned to establish. Fair approach, he acknowledged. I can certain information about myself as gesture of good faith. In return, I'd appreciate insight into current devil politics and faction relationships in this region. Rias extended her hand across the table. That sounds like the beginning of a beneficial arrangement. As Issei clasped her hand to seal their agreement, he allowed a carefully controlled measure of his true aura to surface, just out to demonstrate good faith without revealing his full nature. The subtle widening of Rias's eyes confirmed she detected something extraordinary, though not enough to identify his specific lineage. Well then, she said, composing herself quickly, perhaps you could start by explaining the rather unusual color variation in your eyes. One black, one blue, quite striking and, I suspect, not coincidental. Issei smiled, the first genuine expression he'd allowed himself in this meeting. No, not coincidental at all. They reflect my dual heritage. He paused deliberately before continuing, the black from Ophis, the blue from Tiamat. Quote, the teacup in Akino's hand shattered. Kiba rose to his feet in defensive stance. Even Kaneko abandoned her dessert, eyes wide with shock. Rias alone maintained outward composure, though her complexion had paled considerably. That's impossible, she whispered. The infinite dragon god and the chaos karma dragon would not, produce offspring. And yet, here I sit. Issei replied calmly, living proof of impossibility. The atmosphere in the room had transformed completely. What began as a diplomatic meeting between supernatural entities had become something else entirely, a paradigm-shifting revelation that would ripple through every faction once word spread. Rias Grimori, heir to one of the underworld's most powerful families, found he. RSELF suddenly reevaluating everything she thought she understood about cosmic power structures. And Issei, after 15 years of preparation, had finally taken his first true step into the world he was born to influence. I believe, Rias finally said, her voice steadier than her expression, that we have much to discuss. Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, The Devil's Proposition. Dawn painted Kuo town in watercolor hues as Issei completed his morning meditation on the apartment balcony. 16 stories above the waking city, he maintained perfect stillness, eyes closed, consciousness balanced. Between the infinite void of Ophis's power and the swirling chaos of Tiamat's legacy. The daily ritual had become more crucial since his revelation to the Occult Research Club 3 days prior. Gaining equilibrium between his dual natures required increasing concentration as more of his true self emerged from years of careful suppression. A subtle ripple in the dimensional fabric interrupted his focus. Without opening his eyes, he sighed. "You could use the door, Mother." "Inefficient," came the monotone reply as Ophis materialized beside him, taking the form of a young girl in Gothic Lolita dress. Her obsidian eyes studied the cityscape with detached curiosity. The Grimoire heir knows. Not a question, but a statement requiring confirmation. Issei opened his mismatched eyes, the orning light accentuating their contrasting colors. "Yes, as planned." Reaction: shock, disbelief, strategic recalculation. Issei rose fluidly, towering over Ophis's childlike form. "She's intelligent." Adjusted quickly once the initial surprise faded. Ophis nodded once, the barest movement. Devils are adaptive. Self-interest motivates adaptation. "She's more than that," Issei found himself saying, surprising both of them with his defensive tone. "There's genuine intellectual curiosity driving her, and concern for her territory that extends beyond possession." The ancient dragon Dei. Tai studied her son with newfound interest. "You like her?" Issei considered deflecting but recognized the futility of hiding his thoughts from a being who had witnessed the birth and death of galaxies. "I find her intriguing. Her approach to leadership, her treatment of her peerage as family rather than possessions. It's unusual among devils." The Grimoire trait, Ophis acknowledged. Affection for their servants. Useful for loyalty. Dangerous for objective decision-making. Leaning against the balcony railing, Issei watched early morning commuters streaming toward the train station below. "Is that why you came? To discuss my impressions of Rias Grimoire?" "No." Ophis turned her gaze skyward, where faint traces of boundary disruption rippled invisible to human eyes. Great Red moves more frequently between dimensions. Something disturbs the dimensional gap. Issei's posture straightened immediately. Threat level, uncertain, but significant. For the first time, a hint of concern, colored Ophis's typically expressionless features. Tiamat investigates from her domain. "I monitor the gap. You must accelerate your integration with the devil faction." "I've only just revealed my heritage," Issei protested. Moving too quickly could trigger suspicion rather than alliance. Ophis shook her head, a surprisingly human gesture from the embodiment of infinity. "Time constraints have changed. The convergence approaches faster than projected." She reached out, placing a small palm against Issei's chest. "Your existence was necessary preparation. Now your purpose begins." Before he could question further, her form dissolved into shadowy particles that sank into his skin, leaving behind a faint sigil over his heart, Ophis's mark, dormant but present. "Wonderful," Issei muttered to the empty air. Cryptic warnings and mysterious symbols. Typical dragon parenting. His phone chimed with a message from Rias, meeting at Orc after school. Important developments. Bring overnight essentials. Asterisk. The timing seemed too coincidental to ignore. Whatever cosmic shifts concerned his mother had apparently reached the attention of the devil community as well. Gathering his school materials, Issei cast one final glance at the city below. Humans moved through their morning routines, blissfully unaware of dimensional disturbances and supernatural politics that might soon affect their existence. There was something profoundly admirable about their resilience in ignorance. For the briefest moment, he envied them. Huo Academy hummed with end-of-week excitement. As students discussed weekend plans and upcoming events, Issei navigated the crowded hallways with practiced ease, maintaining his cover as an ordinary, if somewhat reserved, third-year student. The facade felt increasingly hollow after his partial revelation to the Orc members, but habits of caution remained deeply ingrained. "Hyodo-kun." The cheerful voice belonged to Asia Argento, hurrying toward him with a bright smile that somehow never seemed forced despite her complicated history. The former nun's genuine warmth remained intact even after being excommunicated and reincarnated as a devil, a resilience Issei found remarkable. "Good morning, Argento-san," he greeted with a polite bow. She fell into step beside him, clutching books to her chest. "Please, call me Asia. We're club members now, after all." Her green eyes studied him with innocent curiosity. "Did you receive Bushu's message about tonight's meeting?" "I did. Should I be concerned about the overnight requirement?" Asia's expression grew serious. "It's not my place to explain, But, important visitors are coming from the underworld. Bushu has been. She hesitated, searching for appropriate words, under considerable pressure lately. Interesting. Issei mentally catalogued this information against what he knew of current devil politics. Family matters. Yes. Relief colored her tone at not having to explicitly violate confidence. Grimoire family matters that affect all of us in her peerage. The classroom door loomed ahead, ending their conversation as Asia offered a quick bow before hurrying to her own class. Issei watched her departure with thoughtful eyes. The former holy maiden possessed exceptional healing sacred gear and a pure heart, valuable assets in any faction. That Rias had claimed her made strategic sense. But the genuine care the Grimoire heir showed toward her servants suggested deeper motivation than mere collection of powerful pieces. Throughout the day's classes, Issei divided his attention between maintaining his academic performance and analyzing potential scenarios for the evening's meeting. Underworld visitors suggested escalation in whatever situation Asia had alluded to. Most likely candidates would be Grimoire family representatives, possibly even Sears's Lucifer himself, Rias's brother and one of the 4 Satan leaders of the underworld. By final bell, Issei had formulated 14 potential scenarios and corresponding response strategies. As he made his way toward the old school building, he sensed a familiar energy signature approaching from behind. Hyodo. Kaneko Chuju's flat greeting carried no warmth, but the Nekoshu's hostility had noticeably decreased since their first meeting. You walk slowly. Issei smiled slightly at the blunt observation. Just considering possibilities for tonight's meeting. Her golden eyes studied him with feline intensity. You smell different today. More dragon than before. Perceptive, he acknowledged. Few could detect such subtle changes in supernatural aura. I've relaxed certain suppressions since my heritage became known to your group. Kaneko's nose wrinkled slightly. It's not unpleasant. Just stronger. After a moment's hesitation, she added, different from other dragons I've encountered. More balanced. Coming from the typically taciturn girl, this represented remarkable verbosity. Issei recognized it as a tentative peace offering after her initial wariness. A benefit of dual heritage, he explained as they approached the club building together. Chaos and infinity naturally oppose each other. But their opposition creates equilibrium when properly balanced. Like sweet and salty, Kaneko suggested unexpectedly. Issei blinked in surprise before laughing. That's actually a remarkably apt metaphor. Yes, exactly like that. The faintest ghost of a smile touched her lips before vanishing as they reached the orc entrance, where tension radiated through the ornate wooden doors. Inside, they found Rias pacing before the unlit fireplace while Akino prepared tea with mechanical precision, her usual graceful movements replaced by rigid efficiency. Heba sat Clea, ning a sword that hadn't been visible during their previous meeting, a demonic blade that hummed with suppressed energy. Asia perched nervously on a couch, hands clasped in her lap. All eyes turned to Issei and Kaneko as they entered. Good, you're here, Rias stated, ceasing her pacing. Dark circles beneath her eyes suggested recent sleepless nights. We don't have much time before they arrive. Before who arrives? Issei asked, though he had already formulated several possibilities. Rias's expression tightened. Representatives from both the Grimoire and Phoenix families, including my brother and, she paused. Jaw clenching momentarily, my fiancé. Ah, Scenario 7, then, the infamous arranged marriage between Grimoire and Phoenix, a political alliance Issei had learned about during his education on current devil politics. Significant for maintaining pure blood lines among the remaining 72 pillars that constituted devil nobility. I see, he replied, carefully neutral. And my presence is requested because you represent a potential game changer, Rias stated bluntly. An unprecedented power that could alter existing arrangements if properly allied. Issei arched an eyebrow. You intend to use me as leverage against your family's marriage contract? Not exactly. Rias gestured for everyone to sit as Akino distributed tea. I intend to demonstrate that my peerage has extraordinary potential that would be compromised by forcing this arrangement. You're not officially part of my peerage, but your association with us strengthens my position considerably. Political theater, Issei observed, accepting a teacup from Akino. With me as an exhibit. Crudely put, but essentially correct. Rias had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. I wouldn't ask if the situation weren't desperate. The marriage to Riser Phoenix would effectively end my independence and any chance of building my peerage according to my own vision. Interesting that she prioritized autonomy over power or status, unusual among devils, even progressive ones. Issei considered her request, weighing options against potential benefits and complications. What exactly would my role entail? He asked finally. Relief softened Rias's features. Initially, just your presence and confirmation of your heritage if directly questioned. No demonstrations or obligations beyond that, and if that proves insufficient. Her expression grew more serious. Then we reassess. But having the son of 2 dragon goddesses affiliated with my household, even informally, creates significant leverage. The Phoenix family is powerful, but not on par with primordial dragons. Issei nodded thoughtfully. I'll participate, with conditions. First, I retain complete autonomy regardless of outcome. Second, this represents the beginning of a mutual information exchange as previously discussed. Third, I reserve the right to withdraw if proceedings threaten my own strategic interests. Agreed, Rias responded without hesitation. And I offer something in return beyond our previous arrangement, access to the Grimoire family's historical archives regarding dragon-devil relations throughout history. Including records from the Great War that aren't available in public repositories. Now that was genuinely valuable. Historical documentation from that era remains scarce, with most first-hand accounts lost during the conflict. For someone seeking to understand his place in the complex supernatural ecosystem, such information represented significant currency. Deal, Issei said, extending his hand across the table. As they clasped hands, a magic circle flared to life on the floor, ornate, crimson, bearing the Grimoire family crest. The atmosphere grew heavy with magical pressure as Woe figures materialized within the glowing pattern. Right on time, Rias murmured, rising to greet the arrivals. The first figure materialized as a strikingly beautiful woman with flowing silver hair. Her maid uniform, while conservative in cut, somehow emphasized her impossible figure. More significant than her appearance was the aura of power she emanated, easily on par with ultimate-class devils. Beside her stood a tall man with crimson hair matching Rias's shade exactly. Handsome features arranged in a pleasant smile couldn't disguise the overwhelming power he contained. Searsex Lucifer, formerly Searsex Grimoire, Satan and ruler of the underworld. One of the most powerful devils in existence. Rias, he greeted warmly, genuine affection evident in his voice. You're looking well, brother, she responded with formal bow. This is unexpected. I was anticipating father's representatives. The situation warranted personal attention, Searsex replied, his gaze sweeping the room before landing on Issei with undisguised interest. Particularly given recent developments in your associations. The silver-haired maid stepped forward. Lady Rias, we detected an unusual power signature when scrying your location. One that should be impossible. Graphia, Rias acknowledged with a respectful nod. Allow me to introduce Issei Hyodo, a recent associate of the Occult Research Club and she paused deliberately, son of Ophis and Tiamat. To their credit, neither Searsex nor Graphia displayed the shock that had overtaken Rias's peerage at this revelation. Instead, Searsex's expression shifted to one of intense fascination while Graphia's eyes narrowed in analytical assessment. Fascinating, Searsex said finally. I had dismissed the energy fluctuations as instrumental error. The concept seemed too implausible. Issei rose and bowed respectfully. Lucifer Sama, Graphia Sama, it's an honor to meet you both. The honor is mutual, Searsex responded with surprising sincerity. The convergence of infinity and chaos in a stable entity represents a theoretical impossibility made manifest. Your very existence raises profound questions about fundamental supernatural principles. Questions that, while academically fascinating, remain secondary to the purpose of today's gathering, Graphia interjected with professional precision. Lord Riser will arrive momentarily to discuss the progression of engagement arrangements. Searsex nodded, though his gaze lingered on Issei with undiminished curiosity. Yes, of course, though I suspect today's discussions may take unexpected directions given recent developments. Before further conversation could develop, a second magic circle flared to life on the floor, this one orange-gold and bearing the Phoenix family crest. Flames erupted from the circle, an unnecessarily showy display that spoke volumes about the arrival's personality before he even materialized. When the flames subsided, a tall blond man stood at the circle's center. Handsome in a conventional way, with an expression of smug confidence and clothing selected to emphasize his physique. Behind him stood 15 women of varying appearances, all beautiful, all radiating subservience to the man before them. "My lovely Rias," the blonde devil declared grandiosely. "Your fiancé has arrived to discuss our impending union." Rias's expression could have frozen hellfire. "Riser, your theatrical entrances remain as tasteful as ever." Either missing or ignoring her sarcasm, Riser Phoenix strode forward with the confidence of absolute entitlement. "Bringing your entire peerage is unnecessary. This is merely a formality before our engagement party next week." "Actually," Sears interjected smoothly, "there have been some developments that warrant discussion before proceeding." Riser finally seemed to notice the Satan's presence, offering a hasty bow that failed to mask his irritation at the interruption. "Lord Lucifer, I didn't expect your personal involvement in a standard marriage arrangement." "Standard arrangements rarely involve my sister," Sears replied pleasantly, though Steele underlined his cordial tone. "Additionally, Rias has formed an association that may impact existing agreements." For the first time, Riser seemed to register Issei's presence. His expression shifted from annoyance to dismissive assessment. This human, what possible relevance could he have to arrangements between noble houses? Perhaps introductions would be appropriate, Graphia suggested with impeccable politeness that somehow carried unmistakable command. Rias nodded. "Riser Phoenix, third son of the Phoenix family, may I introduce Issei Hyodo?" A slight smile touched her lips. "Son of Ophis, the infinite dragon god, and Tiamat, the chaos karma dragon." The reaction proved worth the setup. Riser's confident posture crumbled, his face cycling through disbelief, fear, and calculation in rapid succession. Behind him, several members of his peerage took unconscious steps backward. "That's," he began, then collected himself with visible effort. "That's obviously absurd. Dragons don't reproduce that way, and Th's particular dragons are natural enemies. This is clearly some ploy to delay our arrangement." "I assure you, it is not," Sears said, his pleasant tone unchanged. "Our sensors confirmed Anomalu's dragon energy consistent with both entities." "Rather remarkable, really." Issei maintained perfect composure throughout this exchange, allowing his aura to remain subtly detectable but tightly controlled. "I understand your skepticism, Phoenix-san. It's a common reaction." Riser's eyes narrowed. "Prove it, then. Anyone could claim extraordinary heritage." "Riser," Graphia warned, challenging He offspring of 2 dragon gods directly may not be the wisest. "It's all right," Issei interrupted calmly. "A reasonable request deserves reasonable accommodation." With deliberate movements, he closed his eyes and took a deep breath. When he opened them again, his mismatched eyes glowed with internal power, the black eye emanating void-like darkness that seemed to absorb light, the blue eye pulsing with chaotic energy that distorted the air around it. A fraction of his suppressed aura unfolded into the room, just enough to create visible manifestation without threatening structural integrity. Around him, reality seemed to both compress and expand simultaneously. The infinite void of Ophis and the chaotic energy of Tiamat, perfectly balanced in impossible harmony. The pressure in the room became momentarily unbearable. Riser's peerage members gasping for breath while even Graphia's perfect composure showed cracks. Sears alone seemed unaffected, watching with scholarly fascination. After allowing the display for precisely 5 seconds, Issei reined his power back, returning the room to normal atmospheric conditions. "Sufficient?" he inquired politely into the stunned silence. Riser's complexion had paled considerably. "I see. This is unexpected." "Indeed," Sears agreed cheerfully. "Which brings us to the purpose of today's meeting. Rias has formed an association with young Hyodo here, which represents a significant advancement for her peerage's standing." "He isn't officially part of her peerage," Riser countered, regaining some composure. "Our arrangement concerns official household members, not informal associations." Rias stepped forward. "The arrangement concerns my future and independence, which directly impacts my ability to form strategic alliances, including with unprecedented powers like Issei." Riser's expression darkened. "The contract between our families is binding." Your preferences are irrelevant. Perhaps, Sirzek's intervened smoothly. There's room for compromise that satisfies both tradition and Rias's concerns. What compromise? Reiser demanded. Either she honors her family's commitment, or she doesn't. Grafia cleared her throat. Devil tradition does allow for resolution of disputes through formal rating game. As both parties hold peerages, this would be an appropriate method to determine outcome while respecting contractual obligations. Issei observed the delicate political maneuvering with interest. The solution was elegant, offering Rias a chance for independence while maintaining the appearance of honoring traditional methods. Even if she lost, the formal contest would demonstrate her seriousness and potentially improve future negotiating positions. Reiser laughed dismissively. A rating game. Between my complete, experienced peerage and her handful of untested servants. That's hardly a contest worth holding. Unless, Issei spoke quietly, drawing all attention, her peerage had appropriate time to prepare. And perhaps, conditional assistance. Sirzek's eyes gleamed with approval. An excellent suggestion. 10 days of preparation, after which a formal rating game will determine whether the engagement proceeds. Should Rias win, the arrangement is nullified. Should Reiser win, the wedding proceeds without further delay. And what of this dragon's involvement? Reiser demanded, gesturing toward Issei. He admits he isn't part of her peerage, yet suggests conditional assistance. That hardly constitutes a fair contest. My assistance would be limited to training and strategic guidance, Issei clarified. I wouldn't participate directly in the rating game. This seemed to mollify Reiser somewhat, his confidence returning. Fine. 10 days, then your defeat, followed by our wedding. I'm feeling generous enough to allow you this small delay to the inevitable. Rias's eyes flashed with determination. Don't be so certain of victory, Reiser. There's more to a rating game than raw power and numbers. Settled. Then, Sirzek declared before Reiser could retort. In 10 days, a formal rating game will be held. Grafia will serve as official arbiter. Until then, both parties will refrain from interference with the other's preparations. Grafia nodded once. The official documentation will be prepared immediately. Both households will receive copies by tomorrow morning. Reiser turned toward the waiting magic circle, his peerage forming ranks behind him. 10 days, my bride. Enjoy your final moments of rebellion. With a theatrical flourish, he and his entourage disappeared in another unnecessary burst of flames. Once they had departed, Rias let out a long-held breath. Thank you, brother. This gives us a fighting chance, at least. Sirzek smiled warmly. I see. Can't interfere directly with family contracts, but rating games exist precisely for resolving such disputes honorably. His gaze shifted to Issei. Though I admit, your new associate played a significant role in creating this opportunity. Reiser's confidence wavered considerably after your demonstration. About that, Grafia interjected, fixing Issei with a penetrating stare. The implications of your existence extend far beyond a marriage dispute between noble houses. The balance of power between factions could shift dramatically depending on your allegiances. Issei inclined his head respectfully. I'm aware, Grafia-sama. My presence in Kuo is primarily educational rather than political. I seek understanding before commitment. A wise approach, Sirzek acknowledged. Though even TS may not allow for extended contemplation. Recent disturbances in dimensional boundaries suggest accelerated timetables for all factions. The echo of Ophis's earlier warning sent a chill down Issei's spine. You've detected these disturbances as well. Our research division reported anomalies 3 days ago, Sirzek confirmed. Great Red has been unusually active, which historically precedes significant supernatural events. Hence my brother's personal appearance today, Rias added, understanding dawning in her eyes. This isn't just about my engagement. One crisis at a time, Sirzek replied with a wry smile. First, secure your independence. We can discuss broader implications afterward. He turned to Issei once more. I would be very interested in continuing our conversation after the rating game. Perhaps you might visit the underworld as my guest. The invitation represented a significant diplomatic opportunity, direct access to one of the 4 Satans outside formal faction negotiations. I would be honored, Lucifer-sama. With business concluded, Sirzek and Grafia prepared to depart. Before activating their transportation circle, Sears paused beside Issei, lowering his voice. Your mother's convergence was no accident, was it? Not with these dimensional disturbances occurring now. Issei met the Satan's knowing gaze directly. I believe there are no accidents at cosmic scales, Lucifer-sama. Quote. The crimson-haired devil nodded thoughtfully. Indeed. Most interesting. With that cryptic exchange, he and Graphia vanished in a flash of crimson light. Eye lens held for several seconds after their departure before Rias clapped her hands decisively. Well, we have 10 days to prepare for a raiding game against a complete, experienced peerage led by an immortal phoenix. No time to waste. Bushu, Akino ventured cautiously. Even with intensive training, the numerical disadvantage is significant. Which is why we need more than training, Rias responded, turning to Issei. We need strategy that compensates for our limitations. That's where you come in. Issei considered the challenge thoughtfully. Riser's primary advantage is regenerative immortality, followed by numbers. His weakness is overconfidence and reliance on conventional tactics. With proper preparation, those can be countered. How? Kiba asked, professional interest ovary. Ding his lingering wariness of their draconic associate. First, we assess each member's strengths and growth potential, Issei explained, strategic mind already cataloging possibilities. Then we develop targeted training to maximize improvement within our timeframe. Finally, we implement tactical approaches that negate Phoenix's advantages while exploiting their expectations. Rias's eyes gleamed with renewed hope. Can you really help us improve that dramatically in just 10 days? Not alone, Issei admitted. We'll need resources and training space beyond what's available here at the Academy. The Grimoire family maintains a training compound in the mountains, Rias offered. Complete privacy, specialized facilities, and bounded fields that accelerate time passage slightly. A day here equates to approximately 30 hours of training. Perfect, Issei nodded. When can we depart? Tonight, Rias decided. Everyone, pack essentials only. We leave in 2 hours. As the peerage dispersed to prepare, Rias approached Issei privately. Thank you, she said quietly. Your intervention changed everything today. I haven't done anything substantial yet, Issei demurred. You gave us hope, she countered. And sometimes that's the most substantial thing of all. The sincerity in her voice caught him off guard. Throughout his education on supernatural politics, devils had been presented as inherently self-interested beings who valued power above all else. Rias consistently defied those characterizations, displaying genuine care for her peerage and now, gratitude that seemed untainted by calculation. Perhaps his mother's insistence on first-hand experience contained wisdom beyond political positioning. Some truths couldn't be taught through abstract study. I should prepare as well, he said, not quite meeting her gaze. 2 hours, then. As he left the old school building, Issei reflected on how quickly his carefully planned integration had accelerated. In less than a week, he'd gone from anonymous student to openly acknowledged dragon hybrid, engaged in devil politics at the highest levels. The timeline his mother's had established over years had compressed into days. Something significant approached, something that concerned even Ophis and had drawn Great Red into unusual activity patterns. Whatever cosmic event loomed on the horizon, it seemed Issei's role would begin not with careful observation but with direct involvement. Starting with a devil marriage dispute and raiding game, of all things. The Grimoire training compound defied conventional description. Nestled in remote mountains accessible only through magical transportation, its traditional Japanese exterior concealed facilities that blended ancient training methods with cutting-edge supernatural technology. Bounded fields maintained optimal atmospheric conditions regardless of actual weather, while time alteration spells created the promised efficiency in training hours. Issei stood on the main house's veranda, surveying the expansive grounds as evening descended. Multiple specialized training areas dotted the landscape, an enchanted forest for stealth exercises, calm. Bat rings with adjustable terrain features, meditation platforms suspended over natural hot springs, and a central dojo equipped with adaptive training constructs. Impressed, Rias asked, joining him with 2 steaming cups of tea. It's comprehensive, he acknowledged, accepting the offered beverage. Far beyond what I expected from a family training facility. Rias smiled wryly. The Grimoire clan takes education seriously. This compound has trained 15 generations of devil nobility. She gestured toward the eastern edge of the property where a distinctive barrier shimmered faintly. Hat section might interest you particularly, the dragon training grounds. Issei's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. Devils maintain dragon training facilities. Not actively used in recent centuries, Rias clarified, but historically. The Grimoire family maintained stronger connections to Dragonkin than most devil houses. Before relations soured during the Great War. Fascinating, Issei murmured, studying the distant barrier with renewed interest. That wasn't included in my educational materials on devil-dragon relations. Most records were deliberately obscured afterward, Rias explained. Devils preferred forgetting failed alliances rather than documenting them. But the Grimoire archives preserved the complete history. She paused, studying him over the rim of her teacup. Ludding detailed accounts of interactions with Tiamat. That caught his full attention. My mother dealt directly with the Grimoire clan. Extensively, during the period preceding the Great War. She served as something between advisor and ally to the family head 7 generations back. Rias's expression grew thoughtful. The archives describe her as formidable yet honorable, with strategic insight that consistently proved correct. If occasionally incomprehensible to devil sensibilities. The description matched what Issei knew of Tiamat's approach to politics, direct, often cryptic, and invariably several moves ahead of contemporaries. That she had maintained relations with a specific devil family represented new information, potentially valuable context for his own positioning within current supernatural politics. I'd very much like to review those records, he said. Of course, they're included in our information exchange agreement. Rias turned toward the main building where her peerage had gathered in the central dining area. But first, we have a rating game to prepare for. Shall we begin assessment? Inside, Akeno had prepared a substantial dinner while Kiba arranged a strategic planning board. Kaneko sat silently eating what appeared to be her third plate, while Asia organized medical supplies with determined focus. Before we discuss training, Rias began once everyone was seated. Issei will evaluate each of us to determine optimal development approaches. Complete honesty about your abilities and limitations is essential. Over the next 2 hours, Issei conducted thorough assessment of each peerage member's capabilities, limitations, and growth potential. He approached the task with meticulous attention that reflected his years of theoretical study finally finding practical application. Kiba demonstrated exceptional sword skills but limited magical range and stamina issues during extended combat. Kaneko possessed tremendous physical strength tempered by reluctance to access her Nekosho abilities for reasons she refused to elaborate on. Asia's healing sacred gear, Twilight Healing, offered unparalleled support but left her virtually defenseless. Akeno showed impressive magical versatility but hesitation using her fallen angel powers in direct confrontation. And Rias herself, powerful destruction magic with noble lineage but tactical blin. D-spots and over-reliance on power-dominant strategies rather than adaptability. Well, Rias asked once the assessments concluded. What's your analysis? Issei considered his words carefully. You have extraordinary individual talents with significant synergistic potential, but several critical vulnerabilities that Riser's larger peerage will target specifically. We're aware of our limitations, Akeno noted with a hint of defensiveness. The question is how to overcome them in just 10 days. Not overcome, Issei corrected. Integrate. Your greatest weakness isn't individual shortcoming, but incomplete integration of abilities. He moved to the strategic board, sketching a formation diagram with swift precision. Conventional rating game strategy emphasizes piece values derived from chess. Queen is most powerful, followed by knight, rook, bishop, and pawn. Riser will approach the game with this traditional hierarchy, expecting you to do the same. But you suggest an alternative approach? Kiba inquired, professional interest evident. Issei nodded. Dragon strategic philosophy emphasizes functional roles rather than hierarchical power. In dragon flight formations, each member serves a specific purpose that complements others, creating collective capability greater than individual contributions. Like a flock rather than a chess match, Kaneko observed unexpectedly. Precisely, Issei confirmed, pleased by her insight. Instead of training to overcome individual weaknesses, we focus on maximizing strengths and developing complementary tactics that compensate for vulnerabilities. Rias studied the formation diagram with growing excitement. This could work, but it requires perfect coordination and timing, which is why the first 3 days will focus on integrated movement and communication rather than power development, Issei explained. Riser expects you to spend your preparation time attempting to increase raw power levels. When you instead present a fundamentally different strategic approach, his prepared counters become obsolete. The peerage exchanged hopeful glances, the first genuine optimism since the rating game announcement. When do we start? Akano asked, determination replacing her earlier skepticism. Tonight, Issei replied, but first, I need to inspect the dragon training grounds. There may be resources there that enhance our preparation. Rias nodded. I'll show you personally. The barriers respond to Grimoire blood. They left the others reviewing the strategic diagram while making their way across the moonlit compo. Toward the shimmering barrier Rias had indicated earlier. As they walked, comfortable silence settled between them until Rias finally spoke. May I ask a personal question? Issei glanced at her with mild surprise. Of course. What was it like, growing up with 2 dragon goddesses as mothers? The question caught him unprepared. Few had ever expressed interest in his personal experience, rather than his political significance or powers. Different, he finally answered. Ophis and Tiamat approach parenting from opposite perspectives that somehow produce complementary results. Ophis eaches through presence, simply existing around her transfers understanding of infinity and patience. Tiamat instructs through structured challenges, each precisely calibrated to develop specific capabilities. They sound like opposites, Rias observed. They are, Issei confirmed. Which makes their convergence to create me all the more extraordinary. Dragons, especially ancient ones, rarely cooperate even temporarily. Yet they raised you together. Not exactly together, Issei clarified. They alternated influence during different developmental phases. Ophis during early childhood when fundamental concepts formed. Tiamat during adolescence when practical application became necessary. They reached the barrier, which rippled with ancient magic distinct from the compound's other bounded fields. Rias pressed her palm against the shimmering surface, crimson energy flowing from her hand into the barrier. Slowly, an opening formed. Were you lonely? She asked quietly as they passed through. The question echoed Asia's earlier observation with uncomfortable precision. Issei found himself answering honestly despite years of training in diplomatic deflection. Yes, dragon deities understand cosmic principles and universal forces, but the everyday connections that humans and even devils form naturally, those remain somewhat foreign to them. He paused, surprised by his own candor. That's partly why this mission appealed to me, the chance to experience connection rather than just study it theoretically. Rias's expression softened with understanding. Then we have something in common. Different circumstances, but similar experiences. How so? Being the Grimoire heir meant my life was predetermined before birth, she explained. Every relationship, every friends. Hip scrutinized for political implications rather than personal meaning. Even my peerage members were initially selected with strategic value as primary consideration. Initially, Issei inquired, noting the qualification. A genuine smile warmed her features. I discovered something my family never taught me, that genuine bonds create stronger allegiance than any contract. My peerage became family by choice rather than obligation. That's what I'm fighting to preserve against this arranged marriage. Her vulnerability and honesty resonated unexpectedly. For all their differences, devil nobly, Tai versus dragon hybrid, they shared the experience of navigating predetermined paths while seeking authentic connection. That's worth fighting for, Issei agreed quietly. Before Rias could respond, they stepped into a clearing where moonlight illuminated ancient stone structures unlike anything else on the property. Draconic symbols carved into megalithic blocks formed a perfect circle around a central platform. The air hummed with dormant power, undisturbed for centuries. The dragon training circle, Rias explained unnecessarily. According to records, Tiamat herself helped design it. Issei approached the central platform with reverent steps. The draconic script carved into its surface was ancient, a dialect that predated most supernatural records. Yet he could read it effortlessly. The knowledge somehow encoded in his very existence. This is remarkable, He breathed, tracing symbols with light fingers. A dimensional anchor point connected to dragon territories that no longer exist in this realm. The Grimoire ancestor who commissioned this had extraordinary vision. Can you activate it? Rias asked, watching his interaction with the ancient structure. Issei nodded slowly. With blood offering from a dragon of sufficient lineage, which I qualify for twice over. Without hesitation, he bit his thumb, allowing several drops of midnight blue blood to fall onto the central symbol. For a moment, nothing happened. Then ancient power surged through the entire circle, dormant magic awakening after centuries of slumber. The stone symbols began to glow with blue-green lig. HT as the very air seemed to thicken with draconic energy. Around the perimeter, ghostly forms materialized, training constructs shaped like dragons of various species, each designed to teach specific combat techniques. Incredible, Rias whispered, watching the ancient system activate. The archives mentioned this facility but couldn't describe its full capabilities. It's a complete dragon combat curriculum, Issei explained, reading the activated symbols with increasing excitement. Designed to teach non-dragons how to fight alongside draconic allies. This changes everything for our training approach. How so? Dragon combat philosophy emphasizes complementary strengths rather than individual power. With these training constructs, your peerage can learn draconic integration techniques that devils haven't used in centuries. His eyes gleamed with strategic possibilities. Techniques Riser won't be prepared to counter. Rias studied the ghostly dragon forms with renewed hope. Quote, so we'll train using ancient methods that modern devil society has forgotten. Exactly, Issei confirmed. Combining forgotten techniques with your peerage's unique abilities creates an approach Phoenix cannot anticipate. For the first time since the engagement announcement, genuine confidence radiated from Rias Grimoire. Then we begin tonight. No time to waste. The next 7 days passé. In a grueling cycle of specialized training, strategic planning, and increasingly complex integration exercises. Issei directed the program with precision born from lifetimes of draconic knowledge inherited through his dual lineage. Pushing each peerage member beyond conventional limits while carefully avoiding actual damage. Kiba mastered draconic movement patterns that complemented his knight speed, learning to channel momentum rather than simply accumulate it. Kaneko reluctantly embraced limited aspects of her Nekosho heritage under Issei's patient guidance, integrating natural spiritual awareness with her rook strength. Asia developed defensive applications for her healing energy, creating protective fields that temporarily redirected attacks rather than trying to withstand them directly. Most surprisingly, Akeno fully embraced her fallen angel heritage after a private conversation with Issei that neither would discuss afterward. Whatever transpired broke through long-standing psychological barriers, allowing her to access her complete potential without self-imposed limitations. For Rias, the transformation proved more subtle but equally significant. Rather than focusing only on increasing her destruction magic's raw power, Issei guided her toward precision application and tactical deployment. The ability to completely erase matter remained her signature strength, learning when to apply surgical precision versus overwhelming force expanded her strategic options considerably. Throughout the intensive training, Issei maintained careful balance between instructor and ally. He provided direction without commanding, suggested without imposing, guided without controlling. This approach earned increasing trust from even the most hesitant peerage members. On the 8th day, with 48 hours remaining before the raiding game, Issei called for a comprehensive assessment through practical application, a mock battle against the draconic training constructs. The simulation will replicate Riser's known tactics, he explained as everyone gathered in the dragon training circle. Unlike previous exercises, I won't provide guidance during combat. You'll need to apply everything you've learned independently. Are we ready? Asia asked nervously, adjusting her modified battle robes, a significant departure from her usual conservative attire. More than ready, Rias assured her with confidence that wasn't merely bravado. We've accomplished in 8 days what would normally require months. Issei activated the training system, and the draconic constructs transformed into simulacra of Riser's peerage based on intelligence Graphia had provided. The central construct took Riser's appearance, complete with cocky expression and flaming wings. Begin, Issei commanded, stepping back to observe. What followed impressed even his dragon-calibrated expectations. Rather than engaging directly as conventional devil tactics would dictate, Rias's Pirag implemented the integrated approach flawlessly. Kiba and Kaneko moved in perfect synchronization, creating tactical openings rather than seeking individual victories. Asia's defensive barriers appeared precisely when needed, while Akeno alternated between lightning strikes and holy element attacks with devastating efficiency. Most impressive was Rias herself, whose strategic deployment of Dester Action magic created cascading advantages rather than simple damage. She had internalized the draconic principle of combat efficiency, using minimum necessary force at maximum impact points. When the simulation concluded 20 minutes later, all construct opponents had been neutralized with minimal damage to Rias's side. Exceptional, Issei acknowledged as the training system reset. Particularly the adaptations when the riser construct changed tactics unexpectedly. We still have weaknesses, Kiba noted professionally. The Queen construct nearly broke through our formation midway. Identified and corrected, Rias countered. That's the point of integrated response. We don't need perfect execution, just perfect adaptation. Issei nodded approvingly. Exactly. Riser expects conventional devil tactics focusing on power hierarchy. Your approach fundamentally undermines those expectations. As the group broke for a well-deserved rest period, Rias remained behind with Issei in the training circle. Evening shadows lengthened across the ancient stones as they discussed final adjustments to the strategy. There's one variable we haven't addressed, Rias noted, gazing thoughtfully at the dormant constructs. Riser himself. His regenerative ability makes direct defeat nearly impossible. Nearly, Issei emphasized. Not completely. Everything has limitations, even immortality. You know something about Fennec's regeneration that we don't. Issei smiled slightly. Dragons understand fire intimately, its creation, manipulation, and extinction. The Fennec's clan's flames derive from ancient phoenix entities that predated devil society. Their regeneration has a fundamental limitation that modern devils have forgotten. Rias's eyes widened with sudden understanding. Their flames require spiritual oxygen, metaphysical fuel beyond physical combustion. Precisely, Issei confirmed, impressed by her insight. Sufficiently powerful destruction magic, applied with perfect precision, could temporarily create a void state that prevents regeneration by starving the spiritual flames of necessary components. Like creating a vacuum that extinguishes fire, Rias murmured, mind racing with implications. I would need exact calibration of power and perfect timing. Yes, too much power wastes energy and creates backdraft opportunities. Too little fails to establish the necessary void state. Issei met her gaze directly. Can you maintain that level of precision under pressure? Determination hardened her features. I can now. Your training methods emphasized control alongside power. Good, Issei nodded. That gives you a contingency option against Riser directly, though the primary strategy remains incapacitating his peerage to force psychological advantage. As night fell completely, they made their way back toward the main compound where the others had gathered for dinner. Walking beside her, Issei found himself reflecting on how quickly Rias had adapted to draconic combat philosophy, a system entirely foreign to her devil upbringing. Her intellectual flexibility impressed him almost as much as her dedication to protecting her peerage. May I ask you something? He ventured as they approached the illuminated main house. Of course, she replied. Why do you care so much? About your peerage members, their well-being, their happiness. He hesitated before adding, it's unusual among devils, even progressive ones. Rias considered the question seriously before answering. The Grimoire family trait of affection toward servants is well known, but it's more than inherited tendency in my case. I've seen the alternative. Peerages built on fear, obligation, or simple power collection. They function efficiently enough, but they're brittle. They break under sufficient pressure. She paused, gathering thoughts. What I'm building isn't just a peerage but a family of choice. Not because it's tactically advantageous, though it is, but because it's fundamentally right. Power without purpose becomes hollow very quickly. My purpose is creating something worth protecting, not just accumulating strength for its own sake. The simple sincerity of her answer resonated deeply. Throughout his education, Issei had studied countless supernatural entities and their motivations. Most powerful beings sought increased dominion, territory, worship, or influence. Few articulated purpose beyond power itself. That's worth fighting for, he said quietly, echoing his earlier sentiment with deeper understanding. Rias smiled, the expression transforming her features in the moonlight. It is, and thanks to you, we have a real chance of winning that fight. As they rejoined the others for the evening meal, Issei found himself experiencing an unfamiliar sensation, genuine investment in the outcome beyond strategic positioning. Somewhere during these intensive training days, Rias and her peerage had become more than theoretical allies or political connections. They had become people he genuinely cared about. The realization was as unsettling as it was profound. His mothers had prepared him for countless scenarios, trained him to navigate complex political landscapes and supernatural power dynamics. But they had never quite prepared him for the simple, transformative power of authentic connection. Perhaps that had been their intention all along. On the morning of the rating game, the Occult Research Club gathered in the old school building where the match would commence. According to tradition, both teams would be transported to a neutral battlefield, in this case, a replica of Kuo Academy constructed in a pocket dimension. Tension filled the air as final preparations concluded. Rias, dressed in her school uniform as a statement of her connection to the human world, reviewed tactical arrangements one final time while her peerage made individual preparations. Remember, she emphasized, we follow the integration strategy regardless of provocation. Riser will attempt to separate us and force individual confrontations where his numerical advantage becomes decisive. Maintain formation integrity at all costs. Issei watched from the periphery, having provided all guidance permissible before direct competition. As agreed, his role during the actual rating game would be strictly observational through monitoring screens in a separate viewing area. Hyodo-kun, Kiba approached, extending his hand. Regardless of today's outcome, your training methods have transformed our capabilities permanently. We are in your debt. No debt exists between allies. Issei replied, clasping the knight's hand firmly. One by one, each peerage member expressed similar sentiments. Kaneko with a silent nod that conveyed more than words could have. Asia with tearful gratitude for his patience during her struggle with combat concepts. Akano with knowing acknowledgement of their private conversation that had unlocked her fallen angel powers. Finally, Rias herself stood before him, crimson hair framing determined features. You've given us more than strategy and training, she said quietly. You've given us belief in possibilities beyond conventional limitations. Whatever happens today, that gift remains. You'll succeed, Issei stated with certainty born of thorough assessment. Your integration surpassed even draconic standards during final simulations. A magic circle flared to life in the center of the room, silver rather than crimson, bearing official rating game insignia. Graphia materialized within its boundaries. Immaculate as always in her maid uniform despite the formal occasion. The rating game between Rias Grimori and Riser Phoenix will commence in 15 minutes, she announced with professional detachment. All participants please prepare for transportation to the battlefield. Observers will be escorted to viewing areas separately. As the peerage made final preparations, Graphia approached Issei directly. Lucifer Sama requests your presence in his private observation box rather than the general viewing area. Interesting. A personal invitation from Searzek suggested continued interest beyond the immediate competition. I'd be honored, Issei responded politely. One additional matter, Graphia added, lowering her voice slightly. Unusual energy fluctuations have been detected. Near-dimensional boundaries adjacent to the battlefield. Security protocols have been enhanced accordingly, but Lucifer Sama thought you should be informed given your heritage. The warning sent a chill through Issei's carefully maintained composure. Dimensional disturbances coinciding with the rating game suggested more significant forces at play than a simple marriage dispute between noble houses. Combined with Ophis's earlier warnings and Great Red's increased activity, the pattern indicated accelerating timetables for whatever cosmic event approached. Before he could inquire further, Graphia returned to the center of the room. Transportation commences in 30 seconds. Rias Grimori and peerage, please enter the primary circle. Observers to secondary circles. As Issei moved toward the designated observation transportation point, Rias caught his eye one final time. Without words, She conveyed both gratitude and determination, a silent promise to implement everything they had worked toward. He nodded once in response. Their preparation had been thorough, their strategy sound. Now execution would determine outcome. The transportation magic activated, and Issei found hymns. LF materializing in an elegantly appointed observation box overlooking a perfect replica of Kuo Academy. Sears's Lucifer stood at the viewing window, crimson hair unmistakable even from behind. "Ah, Hyodo-kun," the Satan greeted warmly, turning as Issei appeared. "Thank you for joining me. I thought we might continue our earlier conversation while watching my sister's performance." "Thank you for the invitation, Lucifer-sama," Issei responded with appropriate respect. "Please, call me Searsx when we're speaking privately," the Devil Lord insisted. "Formality impedes honest exchange, eh? I suspect we have much to discuss regarding recent developments." Before Issei could respond, a third presence materialized in the observation box, tall, distinguished, with crimson hair streaked with silver and features that clearly marked him as related to both Searsx and Rias. "Father," Searsx acknowledged with slight surprise. "I didn't expect you to attend personally." Lord Grimory's gaze fixed immediately on Issei. Intense assessment barely concealed behind civil expression. When one's daughter competes for her future with the assistance of a being whose existence should be impossible, personal attendance becomes necessary. He extended his hand to Issei. "Lord Zeoticus Grimory, your training methods have apparently worked miracles with my daughter's peerage in remarkably short time." "Issei Hyodo," he replied, accepting the handshake. "Your daughter's natural leadership abilities made improvement straightforward. She simply needed appropriate framework. Draconic integration rather than hierarchical deployment," Lord Grimory observed with surprising accuracy. "A method not seen in raiding games for generations. The Phoenix boy won't be prepared." Searsx smiled slightly. "You've been reviewing the old archives, father. When our historical dragon training grounds activated for the first time in centuries, it seemed prudent." Lord Grimory returned his attention to Issei. "The records indicate your mother, Tiamat, was instrumental in designing those facilities. Yet she abandoned connection with devil kind entirely after the Great War. What changed?" Erect question that probed dangerous territory. Issei chose his words with diplomatic precision. "Circumstances evolve, necessitating new approaches to old challenges. My existence represents adaptability, on to changing conditions rather than reversal of previous positions." Cryptic, Lord Grimory noted. Appropriately draconic in delivery. Further conversation halted as Graphia's voice resonated Herohout the battlefield and observation areas. The rating game between Rias Grimory and Riser Phoenix will now commence. Standard rules apply. The match concludes when either king is incapacitated or surrenders. Begin. On the battlefield below, both teams materialized at opposite ends of the replica campus, Rias's group at the old school building, Riser's at the new school building. Immediately, the fundamental difference in approach became apparent. Riser deployed his pieces in traditional chess formation, queen and strongest pieces centrally positioned for maximum coverage, with pawns advancing as screening elements. A textbook devil approach that prioritized piece value over individual capability. In stark contrast, Rias implemented the draconic integration formation they had practiced, a fluid, adaptive arrangement that emphasized complementary strengths rather than hierarchical power. Asia at the protected center providing healing and defensive barriers, Kaneko and Kiba in synergistic forward positions. Akano providing aerial support with tactical rather than overwhelming strikes, and Rias herself in mobile command position. Fascinating, Lord Grimory murmured, leaning forward to study the unfolding tactics. She's implemented pure draconic philosophy without compromise. Extremely risky against superior numbers. Only if executed imperfectly, Issei responded, confidence evident in his tone. Their integration achieved 97% synchronization during final simulations. The battle commenced in earnest as Riser's forward pawns encountered the Grimory formation. Expect. Ting conventional devil resistance focused on power confrontation, they charged directly into the integrated defense system. Within minutes, 3 Phoenix pawns had been eliminated without landing a CNGLE effective strike against Rias's group. Impressive, Searsx acknowledged, professional appreciation evident in his assessment. The Phoenix Queen is already adjusting strategy, though. The real test comes now. Indeed, Eubeluna, Riser's queen and strongest piece, had recognized the unusual formation and ordered tactical retreat for reassessment. This represented the critical juncture Issei had prepared the peerage for, the moment conventional devil tactics would shift toward adapted response. Now we see if their training holds under pressure, Lord Grimoire observed, tension evident despite his composed demeanor. Regardless of political considerations, a father's concern for his daughter remained universal. Below, the battle evolved into a more complex engagement as Riser adjusted his approach. Rather than direct confrontation, his pieces attempted to separate the Grimoire formation through targeted strikes and positional pressure. Under conventional devil training, this would avenue succeeded as individuals instinctively protected themselves at the expense of formation integrity. Instead, the Grimoire peerage maintained perfect integration, adapting positions while preserving essential formation elements. When Riser's knight and bishop coordinated an attack on Asia's position, Kiba and Kaneko executed a flawless counter-pincer while Akeno provided aerial coverage, eliminating both attackers without exposing their healer. They move as one entity, Lord Grimoire noted with undisguised admiration. Like a dragon flight, Issei completed. Exactly as intended. Individual power matters less than synchronized application toward common objective. The battle continued for 27 minutes, remarkably brief for a formal rating game. One by one, Riser's pieces fell to the integrated approach they couldn't counter effectively. Their numerical advantage became irrelevant against perfect tactical coordination. Even Eubeluna, despite impressive individual power, found herself outmaneuvered by Akeno's precision strikes coordinated with ground-based support. Finally, only Riser himself remained, facing the complete Grimoire team without a single loss on their side. His legendary confidence had transformed to visible frustration as everything he understood about rating games proved insufficient against this revolutionary approach. "Surrender, Riser," Rias called across the battlefield. Her peerage arrayed behind her in perfect formation. "Your pieces are defeated, and you face overwhelming disadvantage." "Never," the Phoenix heir snarled, flames erupting around his form in dramatic display. "I am immortal. Your pathetic team cannot defeat regeneration regardless of fancy formations." He launched himself directly at Rias, exactly as their strategy had anticipated. Blinded by wounded pride and overconfidence in his immortality, he committed the cardinal tactical error: direct engagement against prepared opposition with unknown capabilities. As Riser closed distance, the Grimoire peerage executed their final maneuver with flawless precision. Kiba and Kaneko created momentary containment while Akeno generated a specialized lightning field that conducted rather than damaged. Asia's barrier redirected rather than blocked. All elements perfectly synchronized to create the essential condition, a momentary void state around Riser's core. Into this prepared state, Rias launched her precision-calibrated destruction magic, not overwhelming force, but surgical application at exactly the right moment and position. The crimson-black energy struck Riser's regeneration core with perfect timing. For one breathless moment, nothing happened. Then Riser's flames stuttered, flickered, and temporarily extinguished as the void state prevented Spiritua oxygen from reaching his regenerative core. "Impossible," he gasped, dropping to his knees as his immortality temporarily failed. "Checkmate," Rias stated calmly, standing over him with another destruction sphere held ready. "Surrender or the next application targets your king piece directly." In the observation box, Lord Grimoire exhaled slowly. Extraordinary. She actually created a metaphys-ical vacuum that neutralized Phoenix regeneration. A technique forgotten by modern devils, Searsex noted, but clearly remembered by dragons. Both turned to Issei with newfound respect. On the battlefield below, Riser Phoenix formally surrendered, ending the rating game with unprecedented efficiency. Graphia's voice announced the official result. Victor, Rias Grimoire and peerage, by formal surrender of opposing king. As celebration erupted among the Grimoire team, Issei felt unexpected satisfaction beyond strategic achievement. The genuine joy evident in Rias's expression as she embraced her peerage members, her family of choice now secured against unwanted arrangement, represented something his theoretical education had never adequately explained. The value of connection transcended tactical advantage or political positioning. Perhaps this was the lesson his mothers had intended when sending him to experience the world directly rather than merely study it from isolation. Your guidance has freed my daughter from an unwanted fate while simultaneously revolutionizing raiding game tactics, Lord Grimoire acknowledged, extending his hand once more to Issei. The Grimoire family owes you a debt of gratitude. No debt exists between allies, Issei repeated his earlier words to Kiba. It was my honor to assist. Nevertheless, Searsx interjected, this victory represents more than a simple raiding game. It demonstrates new possibilities for cooperation between factions in challenging times. His expression grew more serious. Speaking of which, the dimensional Distribank's graphia mentioned have intensified during the match. I believe our planned conversation becomes increasingly urgent. Lord Grimoire nodded gravely. The research division reports multiple boundary fluctuations across traditional dimensional barriers. Whatever approaches affects all supernatural realms simultaneously. The celebration below seemed suddenly distant as cosmic implications reasserted themselves. Issei's brief immersion in personal connection gave way to recognition of larger purpose. The raiding game, while significant for those directly involved, represented merely prelude to events of truly cosmic scale. I'm ready to continue our discussion, Issei acknowledged, meeting Searsx's knowing gaze. Preferably with Rias and her peerage included. Their demonstrated adaptability makes them valuable to whatever comes next. Agreed, the Satan replied with approving nod. They've earned their place in what follows. We'll convene tomorrow at Grimoire headquarters in the underworld. For tonight, they deserve celebration of hard-earned victory. As the observation box emptied, Issei remained momentarily at the viewing window, watching as Rias and her peerage continued their joyful embrace below. For all his preparation and cosmic heritage, these past 10 days had taught him something neither Ophis nor Tiamat could fully impart through instruction. The power of genuine bonds, formed not through obligation or calculation but through shared purpose and mutual respect, created strength beyond mere accumulation of power. Whether facing marriage arrangements or cosmic disturbances, such connections might prove the critical element his mother's convergence had sought to create through his existence. With that thought, he turned from the window and prepared to join the celebration below. The next phase would come soon enough, with all its complex implications and challenges. For tonight, at least, victory and friendship deserved proper acknowledgement. The son of infinity and chaos had taken his first true steps into the interconnected world he would help reshape. And found, perhaps unexpectedly, that connection itself might be the most powerful force of all. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3, Shadow Pact. Midnight draped Kuo town in velvet darkness as a lithe shadow bounded silently across rooftops. Feline grace guided each precisely calculated leap, the figure pausing occasionally to scent the night air. Moonlight briefly illuminated striking features, golden eyes with vertical pupils, flowing black hair, and the distinctive ears of a Nekomata perched atop her head. Not merely any Nekomata, but one of the rare Nekosho, the most powerful subset of cat yokai, feared for their mastery of senjutsu and spiritual energy manipulation. Kuroka, SS Class Criminal, L in the underworld's most wanted registry, slipped between pursuit and sanctuary with the practiced ease of someone long accustomed to surviving on razor-thin margins. Tonight, however, desperation rather than confidence drove her movements. The sleek fur of her ears and twin tails bore singed patches, while partially healed gashes marred otherwise flawless skin. Getting sloppy, she muttered, crouching behind a chimney to reassess direction. Third ambush this week. Golden eyes narrowed as she oriented herself toward the abandoned shrine on Kuo's eastern outskirts. Rumors among I networks spoke of unprecedented protection there, a convergence of powers that warded against even the most determined pursuers. Normally, Kuroka avoided such locations, preferring self-reliance to potentially complicated obligations. But circumstances had shifted from dangerous to dire. Someone, or something, was systematically hunting beings with dragon blood or connection. Even her carefully guarded lineage, which included distant dragon ancestry from 16 generations back, had somehow been identified and targeted. 3 similar attacks in 7 days suggested organization rather than coincidence. A familiar energy signature prickled her senses, prompting immediate action. The Nekomata launched herself across 3 more rooftops before dropping silently into an alleyway, darkness enveloping her form. Within seconds, her humanoid appearance shimmered and contracted until only a small black cat remained where the woman had stood. Perfect timing. A silver magic circle bloomed on the adjacent street, disgorging 4 white-robed figures with detector crystals and binding chains. Church operatives, judging by their equipment, though something about their aura signatures seemed off. Not quite exorcist, not quite research division, but something unsettlingly between. Signal lost, one reported, consulting a glowing crystal. Subject suppressed, their energy signature or transformed. Radius sweep, standard pattern, another commanded. She's injured and desperate. Won't get far. The cat in the shadows suppressed a hiss of indignation. Desperate, perhaps. Injured, unfortunately. But underestimating her capabilities had proven fatal for many previous pursuers. Still, prudence outweighed pride when outnumbered. Kuroka remained motionless until the search party passed, then slipped through labyrinthine back streets toward her destination. The abandoned shrine lay less than a mile ahead, sanctuary if rumors proved true, death trap if they didn't. Survival had always required calculated risk. Dawn found Issei completing his morning meditation on the apartment balcony, the ritual more essential than ever following yesterday's rating game victory celebration. The Occult Research Club's triumph over Riser Phoenix had culminated in festivities extending well past midnight, with even the normally reserved Kaneko participating enthusiastically. Today's scheduled meeting with Searzex in the underworld promised consequential discussions about dimensional disturbances and whatever cosmic event approached that concerned even Ophis. Yet Issei found his thoughts are repeatedly returning to more immediate connections, the genuine camaraderie he'd witnessed among Rias's peerage, and his unexpected inclusion in their celebration. The communication mirror on the balcony table pulsed with subtle blue light, indicating incoming contact from Tiamat. Issei completed his centering breath before activating the ancient artifact. Mother, he greeted as the reflective surface rippled, revealing Tiamat's human form, a regally beautiful woman with azure hair and gold-flecked eyes that betrayed her draconic nature. The Phoenix boy lost, she stated without preamble, typical of her direct approach. Your training methods were effective. They were well implemented, Issei corrected. Rias and her peerage adapted to draconic integration with remarkable efficiency. A hint of smile touched Tiamat's usually stern features. You've grown attached to them. Not a question, but an observation requiring acknowledgement. Issei considered deflection before recognizing its futility. They're different than expected, especially Rias. Her approach to leadership values genuine connection over mere accumulation of powerful pieces. The Grimoire trait, Tiamat acknowledged. Their affection for subordinates made them unique among devil houses even during my interactions with them centuries ago. Her expression grew more serious. But personal attachments, while valuable for understanding, must remain secondary to your primary purpose, which remains cryptically undefined, Issei noted with uncharacteristic directness. Both you and Ophis speak of cosmic implications and approaching events without providing concrete parameters. Tiamat's eyes narrowed slightly at his tone, but she nodded in acknowledgement. Fair observation. The time for partial information has passed. She leaned closer to the mirror's surface. The dimensional barriers weaken systematically rather than naturally. Something, or someone, deliberately targets connections between realms. This represented significant escalation beyond previous warnings. Targeted how? By whom? Unknown, which itself is telling. Neither Ophis nor I can identify the source directly, suggesting ailment beyond conventional capabilities. Tiamat's expression hardened. However, pattern recognition indicates methodology consistent with ancient enemies believed long neutralized. Which ancient enemies? Issei pressed. My education covered dozens. The old ones. Those who existed before current dimensional architecture established separation between realms. Tiamat spoke the words with uncharacteristic hesitation. Entities that even gods feared during primordial chaos. Cold understanding settled in Issei's chest. The old ones represented theoretical constructs in most supernatural, educational systems. Primordial horrors sealed away during the establishment of ordered dimensions, referenced only in the oldest texts. If they're targeting dimensional boundaries, he reasoned, they seek to collapse separation between realms. Return existence to primordial chaos. Precisely. Tiamat's affirmation carried grim certainty. Which explains both Ophis's cooperation in your Crete, Ion and Great Red's unusual activity patterns. The dimensional architecture itself responds to systemic threat. Pieces aligned with disturbing clarity. His existence, the impossible convergence of opposing draconic forces, suddenly contextualized within cosmic defense mechanisms rather than mere political positioning. What's my role in this? Issei asked, though he already suspected the answer. Balance, Tiamat replied simply. Your dual nature, infinity and chaos in perfect equilibrium, creates a third option beyond the binary choices conventional forces face. Neither complete rigidity nor total dissolution, but adaptive stability. The implications staggered even Issei's carefully cultivated composure. That's considerably more significant than facilitating faction cooperation. Quote, faction cooperation remains essential groundwork, Tiamat corrected. The coming conflict requires unified response across traditionally opposed groups. Your connections with Devil leadership represent crucial first steps. And today's meeting with Issei. Tell him what I've told you. The Satans must prepare their realm while maintaining secrecy to prevent panic. Tiamat's image began to waver, indicating communication limits approaching. One final warning. They're targeting dragon-blooded individuals systematically. Anyone with draconic ancestry, regardless how distant. Stay vigilant. The mirror's surface rippled once before returning to normal reflection, ending the conversation at precisely the moment significant information had finally emerged. Typical draconic communication strategy. Reveal enough to prompt action while withholding details that might constrain independent adaptation. Issei remained on the balcony, processing implications while watching early morning light transform the city below. Humans proceeded with daily routines, blissfully unaware that cosmic forces maneuvered around them, ancient horrors seeking to dissolve the very boundaries that maintained existence as they understood it. His phone chimed with a message from Rias, confirming transportation arrangements for their underworld meeting. The simple technology seemed suddenly absurd against the backdrop of cosmic threat, yet represented the very connections that apparently required protection. With renewed purpose, Issei gathered essentials for the underworld journey. If ancient horrors sought to collapse dimensional boundaries, then even seemingly small alliances and friendships might prove crucial countermeasures. His growing attachment to Rias and her peerage, initially concerning as potential distraction, now represented exactly the integrated approach cosmic threats required. Balance, his mother had said, not just within himself, but across traditionally separated realms and factions. His very existence demonstrated possibilities beyond binary opposition. Perhaps that remained his most important lesson to share. The Grimoire family's main headquarters in the underworld defied conventional architectural classification. Part medieval castle, part modernist structure, part organic growth, the sprawling complex reflected centuries of additions and modifications by successive generations. Crimson light, the underworld's permanent illumination state, bathed ornate spires and elegant courtyards in blood-like hue that devils found comforting rather than ominous. Rias led her peerage plus Issei through opulent corridors toward Issei's private study, pride evident as she pointed out historical features and family artifacts. Despite visiting the underworld previously during his education, Issei found himself appreciating the environment differently through Rias's perspective, not merely as devil territory but as someone's home, filled with personal significance rather than just strategic value. My brother's study lies through here, Rias explained, approaching massive doors carved with intricate scenes depicting the Grimoire clan's history. Don't be intimidated by the formal setting. Issei requested this meeting specifically because he values your perspective. Asia fidgeted nervously with her cross-shaped earrings, an ironic accessory for a devil, thou. Gh1 Rias permitted out of respect for her previous faith. Will other Satans be present? Just Issei and possibly Ajuka Beelzebub if he could be extracted from his laboratory, Rias replied with slight smile. Getting all 4 Satans in one location requires scheduling months in advance unless facing apocalyptic threat. The unintentional accuracy of her statement sent uncomfortable prickles across Issei's skin. 2 guards in elaborate ceremonial armor flanked the study entrance, bowing deeply as Rias approached. They opened the massive doors in perfect synchronization, revealing a surprisingly intimate space beyond. Despite its designation as study, The room more closely resembled a comfortable sitting room arranged around a central fireplace where blue-green flames danced without fuel. Issei rose from a high-backed chair as they entered, casual attire replacing the formal regalia he'd worn during the raiding game. Beside him stood another man whose aura radiated comparable power, though expressed through distinctly different signature, Ajuka Beelzebub, Satan of technological advancement and creator of the evil peace system that enabled devil reincarnation. Rias, everyone, welcome. Issei greeted warmly. Thank you for coming so promptly after your well-earned victory. Brother, Rias acknowledged with slight bow that her peerage mirrored. We're honored by your request. Issei gestured toward comfortable seating arranged in conversational grouping. Please, make yourselves comfortable. This discussion transcends formality. As everyone settled into the indicated chairs, Issei found himself positioned directly across from Ajuka Beelzebub, whose penetrating gaze communicated scientific curiosity rarely seen outside research environments. The SAT. Anne's analytical assessment would have discomforted most beings, but Issei met it with equanimity born from years enduring Ophis's far more disconcerting scrutiny. Fascinating, Ajuka commented, breaking his silence. The energy harmonization is more stable than theoretical models predicted possible. Infinity and chaos achieving perfect equilibrium rather than mutual annihilation. Ajuka, Issei chided gently. Perhaps introductions before analysis. The green-haired Satan waved dismissively. Unnecessary. We all know who everyone is, and preliminary observations establish conversationa. L parameters more efficiently than social niceties. Despite his brusque manner, Issei found himself appreciating Ajuka's direct approach. Your observation is accurate, Beelzebub-sama. The equilibrium requires constant maintenance but achieves stability through dynamic rather than static balance. Like spinning plates, Ajuka nodded, understanding immediately. Constant micro-adjustments rather than fixed position. Brilliant adaptation. Issei cleared his throat meaningfully. While I share Ajuka's fascination with your unique existence, more pressing matters require attention. His expression grew serious. Dimensional disturbances have increased exponentially since yesterday's raiding game. Our research division reports unprecedented boundary fluctuations across 17 known realms. They're targeting the architecture deliberately, Issei stated, deciding directness served better than cautious revelation. The old ones seek to collapse separation between dimensions. Stunned silence greeted this pronouncement. Even Ajuka's scientific detachment faltered momentarily. The old ones are theoretical constructs, Issei finally responded, though uncertainty tinged his typically confident tone. Primordial entities sealed away during dimensional formation, according to ancient texts. Not according to my mother's, Issei countered calmly. Both Ophis and Tiamat confirm their existence and identify current disturbances as systematic attempts to weaken dimensional boundaries. Ajuka leaned forward, scientific fascination overriding political caution. That would explain the precise pattern distribution across boundary points. Random fluctuations would cluster around naturally thin regions, but these occur at structurally significant junctures regardless of thickness. Like targeting support columns in a building rather than windows, Kiba observed unexpectedly, demonstrating strategic understanding beyond his usual parameters. Precisely, Ajuka confirmed, regarding the night with newfound respect. Deliberate architectural assault rather than opportunistic exploitation. Asia raised her hand tentatively, old habits from human school persisting despite her devil transformation. What exactly are the old ones? My religious education never mentioned them. Issei exchanged glances with Ajuka before responding carefully. Information ABO. Primordial entities predating current dimensional structure remains limited in all faction educational systems. Deliberately so, because knowledge itself creates connection pathways, Issei explained, understanding blooming from his mother's cryptic warnings. The more beings who conceptualize the old ones, the more possible entry points they gain to current awareness. Which explains the secrecy protocols established by all faction leaders following the Great War, Ajuka noted. The only universal agreement reached by otherwise opposed groups. Rias's expression shifted from confusion to dawning comprehension. The restricted archives in every faction, they all contain information about the same threat, don't they? Different perspectives but identical concern. Issei nodded grimly. The Great War itself may have weakened dimensional boundaries enough to create initial vulnerability. All faction leaders recognized the greater threat and established information containment protocols while continuing to fight each other over lesser concerns. Politics, Kaneko muttered with typical concision, capturing volumes in a single word. Indeed, Sears acknowledged with wry smile. Cosmic threat notwithstanding, traditional enmities proved difficult to set aside entirely. Hence partial cooperation through information limitation rather than unified defense. Issei cited this historical context against Tiamat's earlier explanation. That approach worked temporarily but becomes counterproductive against systematic assault. Unified response across factions provides the only viable defense. Which explains your existence, Ajuka concluded, analytical mind connecting points with impressive speed. A being who embodies balance between opposing forces, positio. Ned to facilitate cross-faction cooperation when traditional leadership structures would prevent it. Uncomfortable silence followed this assessment as everyone processed implications. Issei neither confirmed nor denied Ajuka's conclusion, allowing the logical deduction to stand without explicit acknowledgement. If what you're suggesting proves accurate, Sears finally said, we face unprecedented crisis requiring equally unprecedented response. The question becomes, how do we proceed without triggering the very panic that would accelerate boundary deterioration? Carefully, Issei replied, beginning with key individuals across factions who possess both influence and discretion. Establishing communication channels without revealing the full threat initially. Like the yokai leadership, Rias suggested. They maintain the most extensive intelligence networks across human world boundaries. Akano, who had remained uncharacteristically quiet throughout the discussion, finally spoke. The Kyoto faction under Yasaka would be most receptive to devil communication, especially with Grimoire sponsorship. Agreed, Sears nodded. Rias, your peerage could approach the yokai leadership under guise of cultural exchange following your rating game victory. Legitimate reason for high-profile visit without suggesting crisis. As discussion continued regarding tactical approaches to cross-faction communication, Issei found himself increasingly impressed by Rias's peerage. Each member contributed perspectives that complemented rather than duplicated others, Asia's compassionate concern for vulnerable populations. Kiba's strategic assessment of defensive requirements, Kaneko's practical focus on immediate necessities, Akano's diplomatic awareness of cultural nuances. The integration they'd mastered for the rating game extended naturally to crisis response, demonstrating exactly the balanced approach cosmic threat required. Whether by design or fortunate coincidence, Rias had assembled exactly the type of team needed for what approached. Issei, Sears addressed him directly, interrupting his observation. Your unique position as both dragon offspring and recent associate of devil faction provides optimal diplomatic flexibility. Would you be willing to serve as primary liaison between established faction leadership and independent power centers? The request represented exactly the role his mothers had positioned him for, facilitator between traditionally opposed groups facing common threat. Yes, though I would require certain operational autonomy to maintain balanced positioning. Understood and granted, Sears agreed immediately. Ajuka will provide specialized communication devices that function across dimensional boundaries without creating detectable pathways. The green-haired Satan nodded. Already in production following initial boundary disturbance detection. Quantum entangled pairs that transmit information without traversing intervening space. One additional concern, Issei added, recalling Tiamat's warning. Someone or something systematically targets individuals with dragon blood or lineage connection, regardless how distant. This may represent either preparation for larger assault or attempt to eliminate potential resistance. Sears' expression darkened, concerning indeed, particularly given dragons' natural resilience against dimensional distortion. Have you experienced such targeting directly? Not yet, Issei acknowledged. Though my mothers have implemented additional protective measures as precaution. Before discussion could continue, a sharp knock interrupted. The study door opened partially, revealing Graphia's concerned expression, unusual break in her typically perfect composure. Forgive the interruption, she stated formally. We've received urgent communication from boundary patrol units. A powerful yokai has breached perimeter wards around Kuo Academy grounds, pursued by unidentified IED entities using non-standard exorcist equipment. Rias rose immediately. My territory. I should return immediately to address the incursion. The yokai specifically requested asylum, Graphia added, citing draconic protection as basis for claim. Given current discussion topics, this seemed directly relevant. All eyes turned to Issei, whose calm exterior masked immediate strategic recalculation. Description of the yokai, Nekomata, specifically Nekosho sub-classification, according to boundary sensors. Graphia consulted a glowing information sphere in her palm. Energy signature suggests SS class designation. Kuroka, Kaneko whispered, the single name carrying complex emotional weight that transformed her typically impassive expression. Issei noted her reaction with interest. You know this individual. Kaneko's golden eyes met his directly, rare vulnerability visible beneath guarded exterior. My sister. The simple statement contained volumes of unspoken history. Issei recalled fragments from his education regarding Nekosho incidents, a powerful practitioner who killed her devil master and fled, leaving behind a younger sister eventually adopted into Rias's household. The connection clarified immediately. This changes our immediate priorities, Searzex decided. If Kuroka seeks protection specifically citing draconic connection, it likely relates to targeting of dragon-blooded individuals you just mentioned. I should return to Kuo immediately, Issei agreed, rising from his seat. If she possesses information about these attacks, securing her cooperation becomes essential. Rias stood as well. My peerage will accompany you. Kuroka is unlikely to trust devil representatives without intermediaries she recognizes. She won't recognize me, Kaneko stated flatly. Though complex emotions colored her typical monotone. But she'll sense your presence, Rias countered gently. Family connection transcends circumstance, regardless of complicated history. Searzex nodded decisively. Return to Kuo immediately. Establish contact with the Nekosho and determine what she knows about dragon targeting activities. We'll continue developing broader response strategy while awaiting your report. As they prepared for immediate transportation back to human world, Issei noticed Kaneko's uncharacteristic tension. The typically composed Rook radiated conflicted emotions that suggested significant personal history with her estranged sister. You don't have to directly engage with her if you prefer distance, he offered quietly as transportation circle formed beneath them. Golden eyes met his mismatched gaze with surprising intensity. Some distances can't be maintained when survival requires proximity. Her simple statement carried wisdom beyond her apparent years. Family remains family, even when complicated. The observation resonated unexpectedly as transportation magic activated. For all his cosmic heritage and diplomatic training, Issei's understanding of family remained theoretical rather than experienced. Ophis and Tiamat, while caring in their draconic fashion, approached parenthood as cosmic necessity rather than emotional relationship. Perhaps this encounter would provide insight beyond tactical advantage. The abandoned shrine on Kuo's eastern boundary radiated contradictory energy signatures, neglect from human abandonment layered with recent powerful ward activation. Ancient Torii gates, weathered by decades of exposure, framed stone steps leading to the modest shrine building nestled among overgrown sacred trees. Kuroka crouched beneath the shrine's wooden floor, feline form maintaining absolute stillness despite exhaustion and injury. Above, she sensed multiple powerful entities converging, devils primarily, but with distinctive variations including another Nekosho whose spiritual signature registered with painful familiarity. Sharon, she whispered, the sister she had abandoned years ag. To protect from consequences of her actions. The bitter irony of seeking sanctuary where her estranged sibling now resided wasn't lost on her. More significant than the devil's signatures, however, as the approach of something entirely unprecedented, energy patterns simultaneously familiar and impossible. Dragon power, unmistakably, yet manifesting in contradictory forms that should have annihilated each other rather than coexisting. Beneath the shrine floor, Kuroka's feline form trembled not from fear but exhaustion. 3 days without proper rest, sustaining injuries that resisted her considerable healing abilities, had depleted resources she typically maintained in abundance. The pursuit had been relentless and methodical, suggesting organization and resources beyond typical church operations. Voices sounded above as the approaching group reached the shrine proper. Despite exhaustion, Kuroka extended senjutsu perception carefully, gathering information before revealing herself. The boundary wards registered intrusion here approximately 4 hours ago, a female voice stated, young but authoritative, likely the Grimoire heir who controlled this territory. The energy signature. E remains present but heavily suppressed, another female observed, older, with distinctive fallen angel harmonics underlying devil power. Attempting concealment rather than escape. A third presence approached the shrine steps, male, with the impossible draconic energy signature that defied conventional classification. His footsteps stopped directly above Kuroka's hiding place, mismatched energy focusing with unsettling precision. You can emerge safely, he stated quietly, voice carrying assurance rather than threat. The sanctuary claim is acknowledged. No devil jurisdiction supersedes draconic protection once properly invoked. Quote, the formal phrasing, ancient protocol rarely utilized in modern supernatural politics, suggested knowledge beyond typical devil education. Kuroka weighed options rapidly, calculating risks against dwindling alternatives. Decision made, she released transformation energy in controlled burst, black smoke briefly obscuring her emergence as she resumed humanoid form. Standing before the assembled group in tattered kimono, injuries partially concealed but evident to trained observation, she maintained dignity despite disadvantaged position. Sanctuary under Dragon Covenant, she stated formally. Golden eyes meeting the mismatched gaze of the young man standing nearest. One eye obsidian black, one sapphire blue, physical manifestation of the impossible energy signature she had detected. Kuroka, last daughter of the Eastern Nekosho clan, seeks protection under ancient accord between dragon kind and yokai nations. Protocol completed, she allowed her gaze to drift toward the white-haired girl partially concealed behind the crimson-haired devil. Hello, Sharon, she added softly. You've grown. Kaneko, formerly Sharon, maintained expressionless facade despite emotional turmoil evident in her spiritual signature. Kuroka, she acknowledged flatly. Still running, still surviving, Kuroka corrected with ghost of smile. Different perspectives on same activity. The young man with mismatched eyes stepped forward, physically positioning himself between potential conflict. I am Issei Hyodo, son of Ophis and Tiamat. Your sanctuary claim is valid under covenant established during the Third Concord between Dragon Kings and Yokai Elders. Kuroka's carefully maintained composure faltered momentarily at this introduction. The impossible energy signature suddenly contextualized, offspring of two fundamentally opposed dragon deities should have been cosmic impossibility. Yet here he stood, infinity and chaos in perfect balance rather than mutual destruction. Impossible, she whispered before catching herself. I get that response frequently, Issei acknowledged with slight smile. Yet here I stand, much like you stand here despite considerable effort to prevent it. Judging by your injuries, the crimson-haired devil, Rias Grimori, Kuroka now recognized from intelligence briefings, stepped forward with diplomatic poise. As administrator of Kuo territory under Grimoire jurisdiction, I acknowledge and respect the draconic sanctuary claim. However, information regarding your pursuers becomes necessary for proper protection implementation. Practical assessment superseded lingering shock at Issei's heritage revelation. Kuroka nodded once, acknowledging reasonable request. The pursuit began 3 weeks ago in Kyoto yokai territories. Initially appeared as standard church exorcist operations targeting strays, but methodology proved inconsistent with typical patterns. Inconsistent how? Issei prompted. Exorcists eliminate targets directly. These operatives attempted capture using specialized binding equipment designed for specimen containment rather than purification. Kuroka's expression darkened at the memory. Those captured disappeared completely. No execution announcements, no trophy claims, nothing. Research subjects, Akano suggested grimly. Capture rather than elimination suggests experimentation. Kuroka nodded. My conclusion as well. When standard evasion techniques proved insufficient, I investigated further. The operatives superficially present as church-affiliated but lack standard authentication markers in their equipment. More significantly, they target exclusively individuals with dragon ancestry, regardless how distant. This confirmation of Tiamat's warning sent ripples of concern through the assembled group. Issei's expression remained calm despite implications. You have dragon lineage. I don't detect obvious signature components. 16 generations removed on maternal line, Kuroka confirmed. Minimal influence on power expression but genetically traceable through specialized methods. Which explains why they targeted you specifically while leaving other Nekomata unmolested, Rias reasoned. But raises question of how they identified distant dragon ancestry without obvious magical signature. DNA testing, Asia suggested unexpectedly, drawing surprised looks from others. The church, when I was still with them, had research divisions developing genetic identification methods for supernatural lineage tracking. For documentation purposes, officially, but her voice trailed off uncomfortably, implications clear without elaboration. Issei filed this information for later exploration, the former Holy Maiden's insider knowledge of church operations might prove valuable beyond healing capabilities. Did your pursuers display any unique abilities or equipment beyond standard exorcist gear? He asked, returning attention to Kuroka. The Nekomata's expression grew troubled. Yes, specialized containment fields that specifically disrupt dragon-based energy patterns. And something more concerning, operatives exposed to direct senjutsu attacks displayed unusual resistance. As though partially shielded at cellular level. That's theoretically impossible, Akano interjected. Senjutsu directly manipulates life force. No shielding OGY should prevent such fundamental interaction. Theoretically impossible, yet practically observed, Kuroka countered. Which prompted my decision to seek draconic protection rather than continue independent evasion. Something beyond conventional supernatural politics unfolds. Issei exchanged meaningful glances with Rias, in spoken communication confirming shared assessment. The targeting of dragon-blooded individuals directly connected to the dimensional boundary disturbances Sirzex had described. Pieces aligned with disturbing clarity. The protection covenant is formally activated, Issei declared. Ancient draconic authority resonating beneath modern phrasing. Temporary sanctuary transitions to formal protection under balanced observation. The precisely worded declaration, DIP, lemmatic midpoint between unconditional protection and supervised containment, reflected careful positioning that acknowledged both Kuroka's criminal status and legitimate protection claim. Agreed, Rias confirmed, adding devil authority to draconic declaration. Grimoire territory extends protection under specified parameters while information exchange proceeds. Kuroka's posture relaxed marginally, the first genuine easing of tension since her appearance. Acceptable terms. Her gaze shifted to Kaneko, who had maintained rigid silence throughout the exchange. And you, Sharon, do you acknowledge the covenant as well? The question carried significance beyond immediate circumstances, first step toward addressing their complicated history rather than simply ignoring it. Kaneko remained motionless for a long moment before responding with minimal nod. Temporary acknowledgement, she stated flatly. Permanent resolution requires more than diplomatic formulae. Fair assessment, Kuroka conceded. Unexpected vulnerability briefly visible beneath practiced confidence. Time reveals truth more reliably than words. With formal agreements established, practical concerns took precedence. Asia stepped forward, gentle determination overriding habitual shyness. Your injuries require treatment. Twilight healing works on yokai physiology if you'll permit application. Kuroka assessed the former nun with mixture of surprise and curiosity. A sacred gear user reincarnated as devil, offering healing to yokai criminal. The world grows increasingly complex. Increasingly integrated, Issei observed. Conventional boundaries between categories become permeable as shared concerns override traditional divisions. The philosophical observation hung in the air as Asia approached cautiously. Hands already glowing with healing energy. After momentary hesitation, Kuroka allowed her ministrations, watching with undisguised fascination as injuries began mending under sacred influence channeled through devil vessel. Extraordinary, the Nekosho murmured. Complete cellular regeneration without senjutsu application. No wonder the church valued you. Asia blushed slightly at the assessment. It's not about value, just helping when possible. Such innocence, Kuroka noted, though without the mockery such observation might typically carry. Refreshing, if impractical in current climate. While healing proceeded, Rias coordinated temporary accommodation arrangements through communication circle. The old dormitory building has suitable wards already established. We can modify them to incorporate specific protection against the targeting methods you've described. I'll need sample of the specialized equipment they used for proper countermeasure calibration, Akino added. Practical expertise in defensive barriers evident. Kuroka's expression darkened momentarily. I have this, she acknowledged, reaching into concealed pocket dimension to withdraw shattered crystal emitting faint pulsing energy. Tracking device removed from operative during last confrontation. Akino accepted the device with magical handling precautions, examining the fragmented crystal with professional assessment. Definitely not standard church technology. The energy signature contains something else. Something older. Analyze it carefully, Issei instructed. There may be connection to the dimensional disturbances we've been monitoring. As the group prepared to relocate to the more secure dormitory building, Issei noticed Kaneko maintaining deliberate distance from her chair despite obvious curiosity beneath her composed exterior. The complicated dynamics between siblings separated by circumstance and choice echoed broader thematic elements of their current situation. Beings connected by common origin yet divided by divergent paths. Integration versus separation. Balance versus extremes. Individual choice versus collective necessity. The philosophical patterns owned. Earlying personal relationships mirrored cosmic principles with startling symmetry. They'll need time, Rias observed quietly, following his gaze toward the Nekosho sisters. Some wounds heal more slowly than physical injuries. Time may be luxury we lack, Issei responded, equally quiet. The systematic targeting of dragon-blooded individuals suggests accelerated timetable. Rias studied him with thoughtful expression. You believe these pursuits connect directly to the dimensional boundary disturbances? Almost certainly. Dragons naturally resist dimensional manipulation due to their inherent connection to fundamental forces. Eliminating potential resistance makes tactical sense when preparing larger assault. Then we must accelerate our response proportionally, Rias concluded. Beginning with understanding exactly who or what pursues beings with dragon ancestry. As they departed the shrine grounds, Issei felt subtle shift in the dimensional fabric surrounding Kuo, thinning that shouldn't have been perceptible through normal senses. The boundaries weakened more rapidly than even Tiamat had predicted, suggesting countdown rather than gradual deterioration. Whatever approached, it arrived sooner than anyone had prepared for. The old dormitory building on Kuo Academy grounds stood 3 stories tall, Western architectural style with distinctive Gothic elements suggesting its construction during Japan's Meiji period when foreign influences reached peak integration. Abandoned when newer facilities replaced it decades ago, the building had since served Rias's Rage as secondary headquarters and occasional residence. Inside, remnants of its educational purpose remained visible in classroom-sized spaces and institutional layouts, though Rias had modified coin areas with furnishings more appropriate for residential comfort. The largest former classroom now functioned as combination meeting room and strategy center, complete with mapping table and communication equipment. Kuroka, freshly healed by Asia's sacred gear though still showing signs of exhaustion, examined the space with professional assessment. Decent defensive architecture, limited entry points, thick walls, strategic sight lines. Her golden eyes tracked the complex ward patterns Akino began establishing along perimeter points. Impressive barrier work for a devil. Your fallen L heritage contributes useful hybridization effects. Akino's expression remained neutral despite the personal observation. Mixed heritage offers certain advantages in barrier construction. NT energy signatures create overlapping protection resistant to single-method neutralization. Like genetic diversity strengthening species survival, Kuroka noted with scientific precision that belied her typically playful demeanor. Hybridization creates adaptive advantage against specialized threats. The observation carried broader implications relevant to their current circumstances. Issei filed it alongside growing evidence supporting integrated response rather than traditional faction separation. You should rest, Rias suggested to Kuroka, gesturing toward prepared quarters in adjacent room. Full debriefing can wait until you've recovered sufficient strength. The Nekosho stretched languidly, feline grace evident despite lingering fatigue. Thoughtful offer, but time constraints necessitate immediate information exchange. Golden eyes fixed on Issei with unsettling directness. Particularly given confirmation of dimensional boundary deterioration. This statement, indicating knowledge beyond what had been explicitly shared, drew immediate attention from everyone present. Issei studied the Nekosho with recalibrated assessment. You've detected the boundary thinning. Senjutsu practitioners perceive natural energy flow patterns directly, Kuroka explained. The disruption became noticeable approximately 2 months ago, beginning as subtle inconsistencies in life force conductivity between realms. Recent acceleration suggests systematic rather than natural progression. Matching our observations exactly, Rias confirmed, exchanging significant glance with Issei. The question becomes, what connects the dimensional disturbances to systematic targeting of dragon-blooded individuals? Kuroka's expression turned uncharacteristically serious. During my last confrontation with pursuers, I managed to capture one for interrogation before others intervened. Limited information extracted before terminating, but significant nonetheless. Her clawed fingers PPED restless pattern against the table edge. They serve entities they call the true ones who apparently existed before current dimensional configuration. The terminology variation, true ones wrath, than old ones, sent cold realization through the room. Not merely similar entities but identical beings referenced through translation difference. Did they explain the purpose behind targeting dragon-blooded individuals? Issei asked, maintaining calm despite implications. Dragon essence contains dimensional stabilization properties, Kuroka stated, confirming what most present had already suspected. Even distant genetic connection carries residual resistance against boundary manipulation. They eliminate potential opposition systematically before attempting full-scale boundary collapse. The tactical assessment aligned perfectly with information they'd gathered independently, suggesting accuracy rather than deliberate misinformation. Rias activated communication circle, established G connection with Searsex to share this confirmation. This accelerates our timeline considerably, her brother acknowledged once updated. If they've progressed to systematic elimination of resistant elements, the primary assault must be imminent rather than theoretical. We need to identify their operational base and command structure, Issei suggested. Kuroka's encounter provides first concrete lead beyond theoretical assessment. On the communication circle's projected image, Searsex nodded agreement. I'll coordinate with Ajuka to analyze the tracking crystal you've recovered. In the meantime, establish protective parameters around other potential targets in your territory. There may be individuals with dragon ancestry unaware of their heritage, Rias noted with concern. Do we identify and protect them without causing panic? The Nekosho can assist with that, Searsex suggested, glancing toward Kuroka who remained visible within the communication circle's range. Senjutsu allows direct perception of life force composition, including ancestral markers. Kuroka's eyebrows rose at being directly addressed by a Satan, but she nodded confirmation. Possible, though labor-intensive. Would require physical proximity to each potential target. We'll coordinate systematic sweep of Kuo territory, Rias decided. Beginning with highest population density areas, where attacks would create maximum disruption. As the discussion continued regarding tactical deployment and protection strategies, Issei noticed Kaniko's continued silence and careful positioning apart from her sister. The younger Nekosho observed proceedings with outward detachment that failed to conceal emotional turmoil beneath. When meeting concluded and assignments distributed, Issei approached Kaniko while others prepared for territorial sweep operations. You don't have to participate directly in activities involving your sister if the history between you creates complication. Go. Elden eyes met his with surprising intensity. Why did you grant her protection? The direct question deserved equally direct response. 3 reasons. First, the covenant between dragons and yokai established during the Third Concord remains valid regardless of individual circumstances. Second, she possesses critical information regarding our current threat assessment. Third, he paused, considering final motivation carefully. Her pursuit connects to larger pattern threatening multiple factions simultaneously. Kaniko's gaze remained steady, not because she's my sister. That relations, HIP represents your history to address as you determine appropriate, Issei replied honestly. My decision acknowledged legitimate protection claim independent of your connection. Something in his response seemed to satisfy Kaniko. Tension easing marginally from her posture. She killed our master. Devil who took us in after our parents died. The simple statement carried complex implications Issei immediately recognized. Kaniko hadn't witnessed the events personally. She'd been too young, but had lived with consequences of her sister's actions, including near execution before Rias intervened. I know, he acknowledged. Those circumstances suggest complexity beyond official records. She went mad with power, Kaneko stated flatly, repeating the explanation she'd been given. Senjutsu corrupted her mind until she killed indiscriminately. Rather than directly contradict this understanding, Issei offered alternative perspective. Corruption through senjutsu requires fundamental balance between practitioner and natural energy. Your sister demonstrates remarkable equilibrium in her current application despite extensive usage. The observation introduced doubt without explicit. Lee challenging Kaneko's established narrative. She frowned slightly, considering implications. You think there's more to what happened? I think most situations contain greater complexity than official records indicate. Issei replied diplomatically, particularly when powerful individuals have vested interest in specific interpretation of events. Before Kaneko could respond, Rias approached with final assignment distributions. We'll begin territorial sweep in 30 minutes. Kaneko, you'll coordinate with Kiba on Western Quadrant assessment. The deliberate assignment, keeping Kaneko safe, paraded from direct partnership with her sister during initial operations, demonstrated Rias's sensitivity to personal dynamics within practical necessity. The white-haired Nekosho nodded acceptance before departing to prepare. Conversation with Issei apparently concluded. Once alone with Rias, Issei voiced the observation he'd been considering since Kuroka's arrival. The systematic targeting of dragon-blooded individuals suggests our adversaries possess identification capabilities beyond conventional supernatural detection methods. That technological sophistication implies organization rather than isolated cult activity. You suspect institutional involvement, Rias concluded, matching his analytical approach. Rather than fringe elements using modified church equipment. The possibility merits consideration, especially given Asia's comment regarding church research into supernatural genetic identification methods. Rias's expression grew troubled. That would complicate our response strategy considerably. Direct opposition to established institution requires different approach than countering independent operatives. It also suggests potential infiltration at levels SUF. ICN to redirect significant resources toward prohibited research, Issei noted. The question becomes whether leadership sanctions these activities or remains unaware of department-level operations. Their discussion paused as Akino approached with completed barrier modification specifications. The protective wards now incorporate specific counters to the tracking methodology identified from the recovered crystal. She reported professionally. Additionally, I've established alert parameters that will trigger if similar devices approach within 1 kilometer radius. Excellent work, Rias acknowledged. What's your assessment of the technology itself? Akino's expression turned unusually somber. Disturbing. The crystal contains energy signature I've never encountered, neither devil, angel, fallen, nor yokai in origin. The closest analog in our reference materials suggests primordial rather than current dimensional sourcing. This confirmation aligned perfectly with their developing theory regarding Old One's involvement. Issei exchanged significant glance with Rias before addressing Akino directly. The energy maintains stability despite displacement from source. That's the most concerning element. Akino confirmed. Dimensional transplantation normally degrades exotic energy patterns, yet this remains perfectly intact despite physical damage to the crystal housing. As though the energy itself maintains coherence independent of material container. Suggesting direct connection to source rather than transferred quantity, Issei concluded grimly. The crystals say, ARVs as conduit rather than storage medium. The implications sent ripples of concern through their carefully constructed response strategy. If the pursuit operatives utilized technology directly connected to primordial entities, the threat level increased by multiple factors simultaneously. We need to adjust our territorial sweep parameters, Rias decided immediately. Prioritize detecting SIM-ALAR energy signatures over identifying potential dragon-blooded targets. The active connections represent immediate threat rather than potential vulnerability. Akino nodded agreement. I'll recalibrate detection equipment accordingly. Though this may require direct participation from our Nekosho guest, given her experience identifying these specific signatures. I'll speak with her, Issei offered, recognizing opportunity to gather additional information while facilitating necessary cooperation. Her senjutsu perception could provide detection capabilities our technology lacks. As preparations continued around them, Rias touched his arm lightly, brief contact conveying appreciation beyond formal acknowledgement. Thank you for everything since this began. The simple gesture and genuine gratitude created unexpected warmth despite escalating crisis. Issei found himself responding with equal sincerity. Partnership transcends formality when facing existential threat. His choice of partnership, rather than alliance, registered in Rias's expression, subtle distinction acknowledging deeper connection than mere tactical arrangement. She nodded once, understanding the significance without requiring elaboration. Partners, then, she confirmed quietly. Against whatever comes. Kuroka occupied the dormitory's third-floor corner room, windows overlooking both academy grounds and distant city skyline. When Issei approached the open door, he found the Nekosho seated in lotus position on window ledge, golden eyes closed in meditative trance as she systematically explored surroundings through senjutsu perception. The boundary thinning accelerates exponentially rather than linearly, she stated without opening her eyes, acknowledging his presence through spiritual awareness rather than conventional senses. 3 distinct weakness points within Kuo territory alone. Pattern suggests deliberate weakening rather than natural deterioration. Issei leaned against the doorframe, respecting her space while maintaining conversational proximity. Your expertise would be valuable during territorial sweep operations, particularly identifying active conduits similar to the crystal you recovered. Golden eyes opened, fixing him with penetrating assessment that belied her typically playful demeanor. Fascinating existence you represent, she observed, abruptly shifting topics. Infinity and chaos achieving harmony rather than mutual destruction. The impossibility made manifest through biological vessel. The direct acknowledgement of his nature, spoken as scientific. I see observation rather than diplomatic positioning, suggested forthright conversation rather than calculated exchange. Issei adjusted approach accordingly, much like a Nekosho who maintains perfect equilibrium with natural energy despite extensive senjutsu application, he countered evenly. Both represent theoretical impossibilities according to conventional understanding. Kuroka's lips curved, in genuine smile rather than practiced seduction. Touché. We both defy expectation through balanced opposition. She uncurled from her meditation posture with feline grace, stretching deliberately before continuing. I'll participate in your detection operation. Self-preservation aligns with mutual interest against common enemy. There's something you haven't shared, Issei observed, reading subtle tensions in her spiritual signature. Something beyond pursuit and boundary disturbance. The Nekosho studied him with recalibrated assessment, apparently recognizing futility of concealment. Rom someone with his particular perception capabilities. Sharp, especially for one not trained in senjutsu directly. She sighed, momentarily dropping practiced playfulness. The operatives pursuing dragon-blooded individuals conduct experiments combining primordial energy with extracted genetic material, creating hybrids that shouldn't exist. Like me, Issei noted, immediately grasping implications. No, Kuroka corrected sharply. Nothing like you. Your existence represents natural convergence of opposing forces achieving harmony through biological compatibility. These experiments force incompatible elements together through artificial means, creating abominations rather than balance. The distinction carried significant implications beyond mere technical difference. You've witnessed these experiments directly. Kuroka's expression darkened with genuine emotion rather than calculated display. Not witnessed, experienced. Before escaping their facility, I observed containment. Units housing partial subjects, dragon-blooded individuals partially transformed through primordial energy infusion. Neither fully themselves nor completely converted. Existing in perpetual transitional agony. Horror registered beneath Issei's carefully maintained composure. The experimentation suggested methodology focused on converting rather than simply eliminating potential resistance, creating corrupted versions of naturally resistant beings to serve opposing purpose. These facilities, location, number, security parameters, he asked, strategic assessment overriding emotional response. One confirmed in mountain region approximately 60 kilometers north of Kyoto. Subterranean installation using modified shrine complex as surface camouflage. Kuroka's clawed fingers tapped restless pattern against the window frame. Security includes conventional human personnel with specialized equipment, plus constructed guardians combining mechanical components with biologically sourced parts. How recently did you observe this facility? 11 days ago. After narrowly avoiding capture during Kyoto operation, I tracked pursuers to their base before being discovered. Escape required significant senjutsu expenditure, which partially explains my compromised condition upon arrival here. The timeline aligned with Tiamat's warning about accelerated activity targeting dragon-blooded individuals. Issei processed implications rapidly, recalculating response strategy to incorporate this new information. We need to adjust our approach, he decided aloud. Beyond territorial defense to active counter-operation. Identifying and neutralizing these facilities becomes priority alongside boundary stabilization efforts. Kuroka studied him with uncharacteristic seriousness. Bold strategy shift. Proactive rather than reactive positioning increases risk profile considerably. Calculated risk against certain consequence, Issei countered. If these experiments continue unchecked, our opposition gains converted assets with intimate knowledge of exactly what they seek to destroy. The Nekosho nodded slowly, professional assessment overriding personal concerns. Logical conclusion, though challenging to implement with limited personnel resources, which necessitates cross-faction cooperation beyond conventional alliance structures, Issei explained, returning to fundamental strategy underlying his involvement. Integration rather than separation becomes tactical as well as philosophical necessity. Understanding bloomed in Kuroka's expression. That's your true purpose, isn't it? Beyond diplomatic positioning or political maneuvering. Creating functional integration where traditional boundaries prevent effective response. The assessment demonstrated perceptiveness beyond Issei's initial evaluation of the Nekosho. Balance requires complementary elements working in harmony rather than isolation, he acknowledged, neither confirming nor denying her specific conclusion about his purpose. Fascinating approach, Kuroka murmured, reassessing him with scientific curiosity beneath playful exterior. Though extraordinarily difficult to implement across traditionally opposed factions, especially given limited timeline before boundary collapse progresses beyond containment threshold. Difficulty doesn't negate necessity, Issei replied simply. And unexp. CTED alliances often prove most effective precisely because opposition cannot anticipate their formation. Kuroka laughed suddenly, genuine amusement rather than calculated response. Like a notorious Nekosho criminal receiving protection from Devil Territory Administrator through Draconic Covenant intervention. Certainly unexpected by conventional analysis. Exactly, Issei confirmed, pleased by her understanding. Now we extend that principle to larger operational parameters. Beginning with combined detection sweep to identify active conduits within Kuo territory. Rising from the window ledge with renewed purpose. Kuroka stretched deliberately, the gesture simultaneously feline and deliberately provocative. Well then, hybrid dragon offspring with impossible existence, shall we hunt abominations together? Your perception capabilities combined with my senjutsu should provide comprehensive detection matrix. The suggestion represented practical efficiency despite flirtatious delivery. Issei considered briefly before nodding agreement. Logical approach, though we should coordinate with Rias's overall territorial security parameters. Of course, Kuroka acknowledged with exaggerated deference that failed to conceal genuine respect beneath playful exterior. Wouldn't want to offend our gracious devil host while accepting her protection. Especially since she appears quite attached to you already. The observation, delivered with deliberate provocation, suggested testing rather than simple teasing. Issei maintained composed expression despite recognizing the Nekoshu's TTEMPT to assess his emotional responses. Professional cooperation transcends personal dynamics when facing existential threat, he replied neutrally. Though integration necessarily includes acknowledging relationship connections rather than arbitrarily separating them. Kuroka's golden eyes gleamed with appreciation for his diplomatic navigation of her provocative comment. Smoothly handled, neither denial nor confirmation while maintaining philosophical consistency. Your mother's trained you well in verbal judo. Among other disciplines, Issei acknowledged with slight smile. Shall we proceed with detection operation planning? As they moved toward the strategy room where others gathered, Kuroka maintained conversational proximity with deliberate grace that balanced respectful distance against subtle indication of interest. Her behavioral complexity, shifting seamlessly between playful provocation, scientific assessment, and professional cooperation, suggested depth beyond her carefully cultivated surface persona. The implications registered as potentially significant depending on how events unfolded. For immediate purposes, however, her senjutsu expertise and first-hand know-how edge of their opposition represented tactical assets too valuable to complicate with personal dynamics. Balance in all things, including priorities. Especially during accelerating crisis. Night Fae. LL across Kuo town as detection operations commenced, teams deployed in strategic pattern covering critical infrastructure and population centers. Rias coordinated from the dormitory headquarters while La field units maintained constant communication through specialized equipment Ajuka had provided, quantum entangled devices that transmitted information without creating detectable pathways between points. Issei and Kuroka covered the northeastern quadrant, their combined perception capabilities providing detection matrix more comprehensive than conventional equipment could establish. Moving through a commercial district currently transitioning from business operations to nightlife activities, they maintained casual appearance while systematically scanning surroundings. Two individuals with I stand dragon ancestry within 50 meters, Kuroka reported quietly, golden eyes briefly glowing as senjutsu perception extended. Restaurant hostess near entrance, an elderly man at corner table. Both unaware of their heritage. Both approximately 12 generations removed from direct lineage. Insufficient connection for targeting under currently observed parameters. Issei nodded acknowledgement, his own perception confirming her assessment while adding details her senjutsu couldn't detect. The hostess carries dormant sacred gear potential as well. Interesting combination with dragon ancestry, however distant. You perceive sacred gear affinity directly? Kuroka asked with professional curiosity. That's extraordinarily rare even among dragon species. Side effect of dual heritage. Issei explained as they continued walking, maintaining conversational appearance despite functional operation. Ophis perceives infinite potential within beings, while Tiamat identifies specific manifestations of chaos energy. Combined perspective allows recognizing sacred gear affinity patterns. Useful detection capability, Kuroka acknowledged. Especially given Longinus class sacred gears. Often activate during boundary disturbance events due to dimensional resonance effects. The casual reference to esoteric supernatural phenomenon suggested education beyond what most yokai received, particularly given Nekosho isolation from mainstream supernatural academic systems following their near extinction. Your knowledge base exceeds typical yokai parameters, Issei observed as they turned down less crowded side street. Particularly regarding dimensional mechanics and sacred gear theory. Kuroka's lips curved in enigmatic smile. Let's say my previous devil master maintained extens. I've researched library before his unfortunate demise. Self-education filled time between official duties. The reference to her controversial past, killing the devil master who reincarnated her, carried deliberately provocative implications. Testing boundaries again, Issei noted, recognizing pattern in her communication approach. Official records often contain significant omissions, he replied neutrally. Particularly when powerful individuals have vested interest in specific narrative. Golden eyes assessed him with renewed interest. Diplomatic non-commitment while acknowledging possibility beyond established narrative. You navigate controversial topics with remarkable dexterity for one so young. Chronological age poorly measures development when raised between dimensions by dragon deities. Issei countered with slight smile. Though your own expertise suggests similar disconnection between apparent and actual maturity. Before Kuroka could respond, both simultaneously detected. Energy signature registering outside normal parameters, the distinctive resonance pattern matching the tracking crystal she had recovered from previous pursuers. Active conduit, Issei confirmed quietly. Adjusting course toward source without obvious directional change that might alert targets. Multiple signatures converging approximately 200 meters ahead. Kuroka nodded, feline grace transitioning seamlessly to predatory alertness beneath casual exterior. 4 operatives plus 1 support technician maintaining equipment. Standard pursuit configuration based on previous encounters. They proceeded with practiced nonchalance while establishing tactical positioning. Issei activated communication device, updating Rias on their discovery and coordinates while maintaining visual RVEY of target location, abandoned commercial building undergoing renovation, perfect cover for clandestine operation. Backup units en route, RIAS confirmed through secure channel. Estimated arrival 8 minutes. Maintain observation without engagement unless circumstance requires immediate intervention. Standard protocol under normal conditions, but Issei detected something concerning about this particular configuration. Energy harmonics suggest active rather than passive operation, he noted, sharing observation with both RIAS and Kuroka simultaneously. They're not simply monitoring, they're actively attempting to establish something. Kuroka's expression darkened as her senjutsu perception confirmed his assessment. Dimensional thinning protocol initiated. They're deliberately weakening boundary at this specific location. The implication sent ripples of alarm through secure communication channel. Intervention required immediately, RIAS decided, abandoning standard caution. Cannot allow active boundary manipulation. Akano and Kiba redirecting to your location now. No time, Kuroka countered, golden eyes tracking energy fluctuations with growing concern. The thinning progresses exponentially once initiated. Minutes matter. Issei calculated options rapidly, weighing risk profiles against consequence projections. We'll engage immediately with containment priority. Primary objective: neutralize dimensional thinning equipment. Secondary: capture rather than eliminate operatives for intelligence gathering. Agreed, RIAS acknowledged through communication device. Proceed with caution. These operatives have demonstrated unusual capabilities against conventional supernatural powers. Intervention strategy determined, Issei and Kuroka approached the target building from opposite sides. Establishing pincer position that would prevent escape while maximizing tactical advantage. Through subtle communication gestures, they coordinated simultaneous entry points and timing. 3. Issei counted down quietly through secured channel. 2, 1, execute. They breached the abandoned building simultaneously, Issei through front entrance with controlled application of void energy that disabled electronic security without visible disruption. Kuroka through rear service entrance using senjutsu to temporarily mask her presence from conventional detection. Inside, the supposedly empty commercial space had been transformed into makeshift laboratory. 5 figures in white hazmat-style protective gear surrounded central apparatus where swirling energy vortex had begun forming, the distinctive signature of deliberate boundary manipulation rather than natural thinning. Intruders, one operative shouted, reaching for specialized weapon system mounted on utility belt. Protection Protocol Alpha. Before weapons could deploy, Issei unleashed precisely calibrated burst of his dual energy, not destructive force but nullification field that temporary. Lee disabled technological systems within specified radius. The carefully controlled application demonstrated mastery beyond raw power, targeting only artificial systems while leaving biological entities unaffected. Simultaneously, Kuroka manifested senjutsu barriers around the central apparatus, containing the dimensional thinning effect before it could expand beyond immediate vicinity. Her Issei spiritual control created perfect isolation field despite the corrupted energy's attempt to establish external connections. Containment established, she reported professionally, playful demeanor. Entirely absent during tactical operation. Apparatus requires physical disconnection from power source to prevent automatic continuation sequence. 3 operatives attempted coordinated response. Drawing secondary weapons unaffected by Issei's technological disruption field, specialized melee implements designed specifically for supernatural combat. The 4th positioned protectively before the technician, who continued working frantically at control interface despite ongoing intervention. They're trying to accelerate the sequence, Issei observed, engaging nearest operative with control. Ed Marshall application that demonstrated mastery without revealing full capabilities. His movements flowed with draconic precision, each strike precisely calculated to disable rather than damage permanently. Kuroka maintained containment barrier while simultaneously engaging second operative through projected senjutsu constructs, spectral manifestations that attacked independently while her physical form remained focused on boundary stabilization. The technique demonstrated mastery beyond conventional nekosho capabilities, suggesting extensive development beyond standard training. The operatives fought with concerning coordination and effectiveness, their movements suggesting enhancement beyond normal human parameters. when Issei landed precisely targeted nerve strike that should have temporarily paralyzed his opponent. The operative continued functioning with minimal impairment. Biological modification, he noted through communication channel, adjusting tactical approach accordingly. Standard incapacitation methods show limited effectiveness. Confirmed, Kuroka acknowledged, her spiritual constructs encountering similar resistance. Cellular structure reinforced against conventional damage pathways. Suggests deliberate preparation against supernatural combat techniques. The technician at control interface had nearly completed whatever acceleration sequence he'd initiated. Dimensional thinning vortex pulsing with increasing intensity despite Kuroka's containment barrier. Tactical priority shifted immediately. Disabling technician takes precedence, Issei decided. Communicating through secure channel while maintaining combat engagement. I'll create diversion opportunity through temporary spectrum shift. Understood, Kuroka confirmed. Positioned for IATE neutralization once opportunity presents. With practiced precision, Issei gathered controlled measure of his dual energy, infinite void combined with chaotic disruption in perfect balance. Rather than offensive application, however, he channeled it through specialized manifestation technique Tiamat had developed specifically for tactical misdirection. The energy released in brilliant flash that affected perception across multiple spectrums simultaneously: visible light, infrared, ultraviolet, and critically, the specialized perception equipment the operatives utilized. For precisely 3 seconds, all conventional observation methods registered overwhelming sensory input that prevented accurate targeting or defensive positioning. Kuroka exploited the opportunity with ruthless efficiency. Senjutsu construct materializing directly behind the technician and delivering precisely calibrated strike to cerebral cortex that induced immediate unconsciousness without permanent damage. The control sequence interrupted mid-implementation. Dimensional vortex fluctuated erratically before beginning controlled collapse as automatic safety protocols engaged. Primary target neutralized, he reported with professional satisfaction. Dimensional thinning sequence aborted successfully. The remaining operatives, realizing mission compromise, attempted tactical withdrawal rather than continued engagement. Their coordinated movement suggested professional military training rather than typical cult fanaticism, further supporting institutional involvement theory. Capture priority, Issei reminded through communication channel as they pursued retreating figures. We need interrogation subjects for intelligence gathering. Before they could implement capture strategy, however, UNEX. Pected energy signature flared from devices carried by each operative. Deadman switches activated remotely rather than by individual choice. Before either Issei or Kuroka could intervene, all 4 CS operatives convulsed briefly before collapsing, biological functions ceasing with synchronized precision. Self-termination protocol, Kuroka observed grimly, confirming lifelessness through senjutsu perception. Cellular dissolution already initiated at molecular level. They're destroying evidence literally from inside out. Only the unconscious technician remained viable, his deadman SWI. TCH apparently requiring conscious activation rather than remote triggering. Issei secured the survivor with specialized binding techniques while Kuroka maintained senjutsu monitoring to prevent any automated termination protocols from activating. Prisoner secured, Issei reported through communication device. 4 operatives terminated through automated protocol before capture completion. Sent. RAL apparatus contained but requires specialized disposal procedure. Understood. Rias acknowledged. Background sounds indicating rapid movement toward their location. Containment team arriving in approximately 90 seconds with appropriate equipment. Maintain secure perimeter until handoff completed. While awaiting backup arrival, Issei examined the central apparatus with careful analysis. Noting design elements that suggested technological sophistication beyond conventional human development patterns. The dimensional manipulation equipment incorporated components that appeared almost biological in nature. Interfaces between mechanical systems and organic materials creating hybrid functionality rather than distinct separation. The integration methodology matches descriptions from other supernatural technology domains. He observed aloud, comparing notes with Kuroka who maintained prisoner security while continuing senjutsu assessment of surroundings. Neither fully technological nor completely organic, but functional hybrid achieving capabilities impossible through either approach independently. similar to equipment observed at research facility near Kyoto, Kuroka confirmed. Golden eyes narrowed in concentration as she prevented their prisoner from implementing delayed suicide protocols through subtle spiritual intervention. Though this represents field deployment, NT version rather than laboratory-grade implementation, the observation suggested organized operation with research division, field units, and presumably command structure, institutional framework rather than isolated cult activity. Combined with church-adjacent appearance but non-standard methodologies, the evidence increasingly supported infiltration theory rather than rogue element hypothesis. Backup arrived precisely as estimated, Akino and Kiba entering with professional coordination that demonstrated their training effectiveness. Behind them followed specialized containment team Ajuka H. Ad dispatched from Underworld Research Division, equipped with devices designed specifically for interdimensional anomaly management. Perimeter secured, Kiba reported crisply, Knight's speed having allowed comprehensive sweep of surrounding area during approach. No additional operatives detected within 500-meter radius. Akino immediately established enhanced barrier parameters around the building, preventing conventional observation while simultaneously disrupting any active communication channels that might alert opposition headquarters to operation failure. Her expertise with barrier construction allowed implementing multiple specialized functions simultaneously without interference patterns that might compromise overall effectiveness. The prisoner requires immediate transport to secure facility. Issei informed containment team leader, professional courtesy masking command structure ambiguity in joint operation. Delayed termination protocols remain potential concern despite current neutralization. The devil scientist nodded understanding, producing specialized containment field generator from equipment case. Stasis induction will prevent further biological processes until secure facility transfer completed, including delayed neurochemical cascade activation. While prisoner transfer proceeded efficiently, Issei noticed Kuroka's growing tension as Aditi Onal Devils entered operational perimeter. Despite formal protection agreement, her status as SS-class criminal in underworld judicial system created understandable concern regarding potential recognition and detention attempt. Your protection status remains in effect regardless of operational parameters, he assured her quietly, positioning himself subtly between Nekosho and containment team members. The Covenant supersedes standard procedures concerning previous classifications. Golden eyes met his with mixture of surprise and appreciation for both reassurance and its diplomatic delivery. Acknowledging her concern without drawing attention that might create the very situation she feared. Appreciated, she replied equally quietly. Though trust requires consistent demonstration rather than isolated instance. A perspective we share, Issei acknowledged, recognizing parallel between her statement and his broader approach to faction diplomacy. Actions ultimately speak more definitively than promises. Their conversation paused as Rias arrived personally, crimson hair unmistakable even in dimmed tactical lighting. Her expression conveyed professional assessment combined with personal concern as she surveyed the operational outcome. Excellent work containing the boundary manipulation attempt, she commended both equally, diplomatic recognition that acknowledged Kuroka's contribution despite complicated status. Initial analysis suggests this represents test implementation rather than full deployment, but concerning nonetheless. The technology integration sagas, TS institutional resources rather than isolated operation, Issei observed, sharing earlier assessment. Coordination, equipment sophistication, and automated termination protocols all indicate organizational structure beyond cult activity. Quote, Rias nodded grimly, matching our developing hypothesis regarding infiltration at institutional level. The question becomes, how extensively has this infiltration progressed, and which supernatural factions might already be compromised without leadership awareness? The question hung ominously as containment team completed apparatus neutralization, specie. A leased equipment reducing dimensional manipulation device to component materials with no residual energy signature that might create vulnerability. Prisoner transfer proceeded simultaneously, stasis F. Yield preventing any further biological processes until secure facility reached. We should complete territorial sweep despite this intervention success, Issei suggested as cleanup operations concluded. Possibility of multiple simultaneous attempts remains significant concern given systematic approach demonstrated by opposition. Agreed, Rias confirmed. though with modified patrol assignments accounting for this encounter. You and Kuroka have demonstrated effective partnership in this context. Continue northeastern quadrant coverage while remaining field teams adjust pattern to compensate. For personnel dedicated to prisoner transport. The end. Remember to subscribe and like this video. See you in the next video.